We're into our 11th episode. We're turning into the big numbers now. It's going to be fantastic, of course, as we start to round out the year. We've got some of the big tournaments to be talking about. Of course, ELEAGUE Cup coming up a little bit later on the show, and also we're catching up with all the tournaments we missed in the last couple of weeks because I've been very, very busy. I'm Switchblade Jay. Joining me, as he always does, is Digital Bacon, my friend. We haven't actually spoken in over a week for once, so how you been, brother?
Yeah, it has been a massive. It's always a busy week, ain't it?
No, I scratched that. Sorry, we were talking. We were doing the Neon Dream as well, and my game completely shit the bed. So I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, because I've started doing broadcasting work, so yeah. That would be why. But that was hectic mistake. For anyone that doesn't know, because of course, you don't go and say this out in the open, but basically Jay's Rocket League game just pooped out on him. It's fine now, but for some reason it wasn't working, was it at all?
No, and here's the key thing about that. I have no fucking idea what went wrong. Like, I remember getting into the game, it was working fine. We joined spectator, it was great, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Neon Dream. We're about to get into our third and penultimate draft and then go into the game. Here we go. Just literally, that's exactly how it went. The game completely shat itself, and I couldn't figure out why. Literally, the rest of the day was me updating drivers, changing settings, turning VSync on and off again, and I couldn't figure out what was going on because, like, for some reason, the GPU just wasn't activating for Rocket League specifically. I tried games that were operating in the Unreal Engine as well. I tried Source games, and those were all working relatively well of their own right. So I literally had no idea what happened, but next day I turn it back on, I'm trying to re-diagnose the issue, go into some training practice, and it works fine. Like, what happened? What the actual shit? I honestly could not tell you what happened. I still have no idea. So it works now again, but like, I'm concerned for the Neon Dream on Wednesday, because if it craps out then I'm just gonna probably jump off a bridge. I don't even know what
at least on Wednesday I'm not broadcasting that, because that was the problem. Like, I'm never doing it again, but I was doing the broadcasting for Saturday and Sunday because I'm the backup broadcaster. So I was then doing broadcasting and casting, and no lie, because of the setup, having to have multiple sources, I had to have two headsets like this the entire broadcast. Thank God we didn't have cams, because I looked ridiculous during that. And that's just... Word. You got to do what you got to do.
Dude, you need to get yourself voice meter potato. It's fantastic. It's like the best app in the world. Legit. Do you know what? That's how Fraser does his production. Yeah. By the way, special shout outs to Fraser, by the way. I've not given him enough credit. That man has come in clutch for the last few weeks when Ben has not been able to do the podcast. So thank you for making this whole fucking thing possible in the first place. So cheers, mate. Right. Maybe you could also help us doing the production on the fucking Neon Dream. That'll also be just as great. Give Bacon a little bit less stress to worry about at the moment.
We do need new broadcasters. We got one new lad being trained up in the moment. So Fraser, if you want to come join us, but I hear you're busy doing a lot of CS stuff, so you might not have the time. That's what I worry about.
Don't worry. I'm sure. We'll talk to him after this one. But let's actually get into the podcast now. That's what you're here to see. You're here to see us or to hear us if you listen to the audio version. That is, of course, available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and all of your favorite podcasting platforms. You're here to talk. Listen. Oh my God. You're here to listen to us talk about some Rocket League. So let's get into the news this week. Big fucking news week as well, by the way. Like, there's so much that went down over the course of the last over the last few days, let alone the last week. So let's start with the oldest piece of news, and that's Psyonix bringing in I'm going to struggle to say this, Ian Nowakowski into their esports team, now expanding their team from 4 people to 5. Isn't that great? And already we've already seen some of the special. They've already seen a part of him already coming into fruition and doing some really good work. But just want to talk about him individually alone. Obviously, we're always hyped to see new people come into the esports space of Rocket League. Obviously, that's what this podcast is about. And he's got a lot of really good experience backing him as well. So I can only see positive things for this move.
Yeah, definitely. Was in a meeting last Tuesday with him and the other Psyonix guys, because after each of the Renegade Cup, a little peek behind the curtain guys, is all the organizers sort of get together and run down, what went well, what went bad, basically give stats and all of that, so we can try and improve the Renegade Cup going forward. And yeah, he was just part of that, and he is essentially, I don't know if Psyonix would hate me for this, but who is now the lead, if you want to call it that, for the community events. I mean, don't want to break the other news, but we've got some bigger events coming up across 2019.
I mean, if that wasn't
Sussly
obvious with the
hyped.
other announcement, then, you know.
Yeah, and this doesn't look to be the only announcement. So basically, they're expanding their esports team, and he is near enough going to, I would say, solely be in charge of this community side going forward. And it's like a transitional stage for him as he's just picking it up at the moment. But he seems like a good lad, and hope to, you know, work with him more in the future, of course.
Yeah, I mean, legit. And so far it's been a fantastic time seeing him just come into fruition and do some really good work. Obviously, there's the other big motherfucker fuck off news that came out literally, like, I think a day after he took the position.
Today. I can feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, we are. It's going to be one of those days. Let's put it that way. But obviously, the next big news that came out, obviously, is the fact that my prediction that I had a couple podcasts ago in episode 9 about Dreamhack not doing any more Rocket League events is completely false. Because they just announced their $400 circuit.
I remember in that same one, I was there like, no, there's going to be something, because on the Dreamhack schedule, they've got Rocket League as a big event. And I was there like, Dreamhack Leipzig is back, but we weren't expecting what this is, the pro circuit, were we really?
Yeah, no, wasn't expecting that at all. But a $400,000 LAN, obviously, $400,000 circuit, I should say, $100,000 LAN and 4 events over the course of the next year, guaranteed by Dreamhack. That's already a 400% increase compared to what we had last year. So I'm happy about that. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Esports is growing, yo.
Esports is growing. Esports ready, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, no, I'm extremely hyped about this. Obviously, you know, Dreamhack always have a really big reputation about putting on high quality events. We saw that with Leipzig this past January as well. Just how well that event ran and how well Dreamhack were able to put that in the Open Series. You know, again, like I said, Dreamhack are the kind of tournament organizer that I was really hyped. I really want to see do more stuff in Rocket League, because they can do more stuff in Rocket League and they can do stuff really, really well. And obviously, I want to give a special shout out to Ty Lacto, I believe it was last couple of weeks ago, when he was the one who specifically called for events done by Dreamhack in the next year. So thanks for the leaks, bruv. I'm going to make sure I trust you from now on.
Well, he's got that player perspective. Like, from me looking at a lot of things and talking to a lot of players, this seems to be, next year is going to be a transitional period for Rocket League, and this actually, over the last 2 weeks of talking to a lot of people, has sort of cleared it to, I reckon RLCS is going to transition into a once a year event with a lot of new stuff coming in. Next year we'll probably see 2 events still, but it would be the introduction of stuff like this pro circuit, see other, you know, organizations, other companies get in. But this is sort of like, this is setting the path to something bigger for Rocket League, which is more akin to your CS, your League of Legends, your Dotas and all of that, where it's not just the developer putting on tournaments. They're starting to hand over control to these other companies. They still work with them directly, which I'm still 50-50 on, because it means there's less freedom for Dreamhack, and Psyonix is going to be a bit stretched by it. But Rocket League Esports is growing, and it's at a perfect time, I think, because it's needed now, you know?
Yeah, like this growth for injection right now is really what's required for the Rocket League scene. Obviously, it's great to see more third-party events. Do love the League of Legends comparison that you made, because right now Riot is like the only organizer of any top-tier events in League of Legends. So, I mean, more akin to your Counter-Strike more than anything else.
I'm thinking Dota, not League, really, for that, aren't I?
There you go. Now, that's a bit more appropriate.
I always get those two mixed up, because they're the same thing, you know? Like...
Do you know what? Honestly, I would absolutely love to see a Dota style circuit in Rocket League. I think the game really works well for that. Obviously, you've got a lot of interest from other tournament organizers that want to put on prize pool events and having like a little circuit that leads into the RLCS. Like, we were talking about it a few weeks ago. Obviously, we have the minors and the majors almost of Rocket League, and to me, that seems like the most sensible way to go about everything. You know, it's certainly my most preferred format in all of esports. Although I am biased being a Counter-Strike fan, so you know. We get no love as usual from Valve. So yeah, no, I'm quite excited to see where this goes for Dreamhack. Maybe they might be able to run it 4 events every year. You know, if they do that with support from the developer, maybe we could be going even further than that on $150,000 events and $200,000 events, and have that grow with the Rocket League circuit as a whole. I'm actually really excited for what this means, not only for next year but also years in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And like, my only worry with this Dreamhack circuit is that it's NA in EU. Don't get me wrong, Psyonix has always been focused on those two. We only have Throwdown for OC is the other region. So, like some of the players have been saying, let's just say CJ, we're hoping there's qualifiers to get across because it's not financially viable for these other regions to go across and play. Because remember, it is open. So you can just turn up at the circuit. You don't have the invited teams just automatically get seeded and can skip the qualifiers. And there's generally as well some sort of like financial help with the orgs, so that Dreamhack pays to get the invited teams across in some extent. Maybe like half of the cost, or they'll arrange accommodation, whatever. But for the qualifiers, you have to make your own way across. Now, teams with orgs from EU and NA can do that. But if you're an OCE org, even the Chiefs, you will struggle to get across just because there's not money in Rocket League in those regions, even in OCE, which is a bit, I would say, scary after this length of time.
Yeah, and OCE is like one of those regions that really deserves that money, considering where they've been in the Rocket League scene. The fact that they can't afford to like go to a DreamHack event like this, I think they are missing out by quite the amount. I'm hoping that there are some qualifiers for this kind of that kind of thing. There's a lot of events that do that. They have direct invites and they give out a limited number of spots based off of a qualifier. I work with StarLadder quite a lot. And they're the ones that actually do that. They're the ones that that bring that sort of idea into the fold. There's a big qualifying circuit that leads up to the circuit of Star Series. And I think that maybe DreamHack could also benefit from doing that. In fact, I think DreamHack already do that with most of their open events, actually. Hold on. I'm actually going to... So
they do last time for, say, Leipzig, to use as the example, and for Atlanta, I think, as well, beforehand. They do an invitation system, but it's only previously been done for NA and EU, not to other regions.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like because in general, whenever they do their whenever they do their tournament circuits around Counter-Strike, I usually take obviously we all know how much I love my Counter-Strike comparisons. Usually they do some sort of like European and North American qualifiers to go to those certain events, or maybe even OCE qualifier, depending on the certain region that they're going to be going into. So usually it's about 6 invites plus those 2 from the online qualifiers. And it's the same thing, I believe, for their Masters events. I'm just going to take a look at one of the former Masters events and see. Yeah, they have the same thing, but with North America, Asia, OCE, all those different places also put in place, but with an increase from 8 to 16 teams as well. So I'd like to see systems like that put in place for all the other regions as well, to give all the other teams that want their chance at glory to potentially have that glory. I feel like it's going to, it will be a nice inclusive way to do things. As you say, it's very, very difficult for teams from Asia and OCE who have the potential to be world beaters, just can't quite go to these kind of events,
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it from Chiefs. That's the biggest example, really, at the moment. Coming out 4th at RLCS, and you're just there going, this is a team that now needs to be going to these events all the time to essentially grow the OCE scene. Because if we saw it before when Chiefs first got onto the, the RLCS stage, and they were quite impressive, because they have propelled themselves by using all that competition, by going across and fighting against EU and NA. It upped their skill, which then in turn upped the skill of the rest of OCE because they had a better opponent. You can only be as good as the top dog, essentially, in your region. So competition is always good. I know we're getting a little bit on a tangent here, Jay, by talking about OCE, but I mean, it's applicable to EU as well, because you'll notice stuff like PSG, I think, by facing off against teams like Chiefs, have actually improved PSG. You look at them now, they are growing as a team, and they're one that PSG still have struggles at LAN, and they still need to work on that. But even then, by going to these LAN events and opening up to as many teams as possible, you're then improving your European teams like PSG.
Well, actually, if I might take this into a completely different tangent, we're obviously an EU podcast. We focus on the EU scene overall. And there's also the idea of bringing up like loads of lower tier sort of like Rocket League teams from the EU scene. Obviously, we've seen sort of comments from RLRS players saying that all of the RLRS teams could potentially be RLCS teams. So why not give those guys a platform as well? Red Reserve, obviously, as you were making the bold statement
in the world.
Yeah, you're making a bold statement. They're probably a top 4 EU team, which honestly, considering where we've come since then, honestly, I feel like that might have not even be a bad fucking shout at all. So, like obviously giving those teams a chance to prove themselves on a big stage, that would be a fantastic sort of system to implement in the DreamHack event, especially with this pro circuit, especially with the chances being available now for teams not only to make it through the ROCS but also through this. Why not? Why not put that in?
I think for me, it's going to be interesting to see that because Red Reserved are, I would say, an unfielded LAN team at the moment, you know. So when Leipzig comes around in February, we'll finally be able to see how they stack up against the RLCS teams because just because of how the system works, they've been stuck in RLRS. With the pro circuit, though, where this is also going to make it a lot easier for these unsigned teams because more opportunities to do them. So of course we don't have the esports, you know, items in game that, but more events means sponsors are more interested because, you know, that's more marketing for them, more fielding of their team. That's how it works, you know. So Leipzig happening in the middle of February, I think it's like the second week actually. It's pretty damn early. That's going to be good because Red Reserve, we expect to see them there. Like there is no reason for them not to make it long, even if they don't get invited through the qualification sort of system they have in January. They're going to be there and they'll have to fight out. But that for me is going to be the big telling point for how they actually stack up because, like I said, they're currently the 10th best team in the world on Liquipedia, but that's because
online events only,
they're getting online events and they're continuously getting wins, but that's because they're going up against people of the same level or below them most of the time. So that wins. It was like the explanation of Mouse is something like 26th in the world at the moment, but that's because they've lost after loss after loss, and against the RLCS teams, that loss weighs up the same as losing to a team like, you know, Stratus or whatever. Stratus, I'm not knocking them at all because they've been doing fantastic at the moment in the bubble scene, but it doesn't, like, the evening of weight isn't particularly fair. Liquipedia is more like, you know, a guide. It's not an actual, this is a fact of your level, you know?
Yeah, like for certain. So I mean, we could talk about the Liquipedia rankings all day we want to, but again, I feel like there probably is a nice chance for, you know, RLRS teams to make it into a LAN environment and try so they can show up on the big stage again. I'm really excited for what this has to mean for Rocket League. Another thing I'm also excited to see what it means for Rocket League is also this little tweet that came in from Keemstar. Now we've seen Keemstar around the Rocket League scene a little bit. I mean, he's not really like a massive investment into the RL esports space, but or at least not as of yet. But he did tweet this as well. And he's just a quote on the tweet itself. I'm going to try and do an RL esports event in the future with gaming entertainers and RL pros. Spring 2019 is when I'll be free to work on this. Now that's already pretty fucking, you know, baller already. Like Keemstar's got money to work with. He's a really he's a figurehead at the very least on in terms of
he's
being,
a brand as well. You got to remember that he's not just an individual. He is
he's a brand that also brings another audience into the Rocket League space. Now whether that brand is a good idea or a bad idea is another conversation which we'll come to in a second. But what I do think is a good idea is this sort of response from a guy called Christian Bishop. Now for those of you who don't know what he is or who he is, he's the VP and commissioner of ESP Gaming, and ESP Gaming are essentially an esports production company. They currently have the likes of Richard Lewis on their books right now. Richard Lewis is the talent manager for that particular company. They do the world WSOE, which is like the world. I can't remember what it is. Like the World Series. It's the World Series of Esports. That's it. That's and they basically do like one-off tournaments, like boxing style of booking sort of things. Like we're going to book these teams are going to go up against each other. It's going to be a really really hyped tournament, and we're going to try and make something really big out of it. And obviously, Richard Lewis is a guy that I personally rep. He's a guy that I'm certainly like, right, this guy is going to be, you know, this guy is clinical to the operations of esports. So having ESP jump in and potentially take this on board, that's certainly a fantastic idea. So I just want to probe your thoughts really quickly before we get into the next big thing. You know?
Yeah. So for this one, this is a really interesting concept. He initially, in another tweet, said that he wanted it to be a 2v2. You know, one pro player and one entertainer. That's not going to work, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. Because basically, Rocket League has such a varied skill level. Like even if you got in these entertainers, like we've seen Lyric and Donut play a lot of Rocket League, and they've been. Like they carry across their viewer base. If you've ever noticed, like Rocket League suddenly jumped up to 40, 50,000 viewers, it's them at the moment where they're really enjoying Rocket League. I don't know if that's just them, if they're in back because they are enjoying it, or Psyonix has had a word, you know, because you do get sponsored deals on Twitch. That's why whenever you see a new game come out, loads of people are playing it. I think the last one that I can remember was either South Park with their new game or Far Cry 5. Far Cry 5 being a massive one on that, where near enough paid a good 40 to 50 streamers to play it on launch day, where they'd send it out, you know, beforehand, all of those deals, whatever. But this would would bring so much interest because everyone is already interested in Rocket League. RLCS is a big example of it. ELEAGUE got very good viewership over the last week. And it's because it's so open to casual viewers. So getting in entertainers, like he used the example of Dr. Disrespect pairing with Squishy would be fantastic. The problem is you couldn't just have two. I would even say if you had 3 people on team, so like let's just say you would have Cloud9, Squishy and Gimmick joined by Dr. Disrespect, that's still very much feeling like it's a 2-on-2 with these 2 entertainers stapled on. The way this system could work would maybe be getting entertainers with a whole pool of pro players for the entertainers then to like draft their picks so that it's very randomized and everyone has to work for a system together instead of trying to staple on a single player or a single team. It would have to be very randomized for it to be sort of fair, I'd say. Otherwise, and they've got to try and you would have a sort of word with the players to try and get that entertainer involved as much as possible. Otherwise, it's not going to work. The entertainer's just going to be sitting to the side, not doing much, because the players would just much rather play 2v2 and just leave them out, you know?
Yeah, I feel that nature. Like, oh my god, like half the time I queue up with people, it's like, oh, you're pretty terrible. We're gonna play without
Solo
you.
standards, you just focus on defense and let your 2 teammates bullshit. That is it.
Exactly, exactly, and just pray for the best, basically. Right, but there are other problems with this whole thing, as is pointed out by a couple of people. I'm just going to go to this quick question from Tag Matter. We're not quite in the mailbag segment. We're going to have that coming up later, but this is kind of relevant to the point. He asked this earlier today. Said, quote, with Keem's interest in making RL events is inevitably going to hit that prize pool wall that Psyonix have put in place. Could this wall turn people like Keem away from doing events? And that's a really good question, actually, because that is a problem you have to overcome. And with the controversial nature of Keemstar as a whole, you know, obviously being the drama alert thing, he focuses exclusively on drama, which is something that Psyonix we've known they don't like negativity within the scene, which is a miracle that this podcast even exists as a result. But you know, it is a good point. You know, are they gonna would they do that? You know, would they allow an event by Keemstar or headed up by Keemstar to actually have something, you know, have actually come up to fruition? You know.
So an event by Keemstar? No. This Christian Bishop coming in, yes. Where it's got a whole production company that's reputable. It would be able to keep Keemstar in order. Keemstar, of course, would probably want to be involved in some way, whether as a host or, you know, a stage host, something like that, because that's how he is. But if you have a reputable production company that's going to be able to keep him in check, essentially, you know, reduce the risk, then Psyonix would say yes. You know, if someone's coming in with $100,000, which is believable here. Very believable. I would say it's the questionable one purely because you say look at ELEAGUE, that was 150,000. With entertainers, you got to take into account that maybe they would do a 75,000 just to try and keep, you know, because Psyonix are worried about prize pool staging essentially because they know how much they can put in, the 1 million across the whole of RLCS, and they don't want that to be upstaged. Hence why all these other ones are sort of like leaning about it, and that's why the pro circuit for Dreamhack is probably at 400,000. I would say Dreamhack could have quite handily put in 1 million across the whole year, but this is Psyonix trying to put staging in an event, and I'm not against that at all. I think that's a healthy sort of like thing to do within reason, of course, because it's trying to just show the difference in level of event. And that's absolutely fine as long as there's, you know, enough events to justify it, which has always been my thing against it up until now. But looking to these like bigger and more events, I'm okay with that now because, like I said, it justifies it. But the problem is Keemstar being that controversial figure, unless he does get in a production studio behind him, it's not going to happen. People worrying about that 5,000, that only really applies to community tournaments and like just ones which Psyonix don't have to worry about. Here, no, they would have to go to Psyonix and just talk it out. And Psyonix, they've been daft to not say yes to it because it brings in so much to them, you know?
It really does, but I don't know if the community really looks at it that way. And that's the key thing about the whole drama thing. Obviously, that's not just something that we can speculate about. There's actually provable evidence to the fact that there's probably a little bit of backlash, a little bit of grain essentially on this whole project if it does come to fruition, because I don't know how many people saw this exchange on Twitter, but Leafx was very, very, very outspoken about the concept of doing a Rocket League Esports thing. Keem put the tweet out, and then Lawler responded saying, "I'm willing to help you in any way that I can. I know that the community appreciates it." Leafx came in and said, "Yeah, speak for yourself, not the community. I will never support anything this guy does." And he talks about stuff like that. And this is the
very
tweet
harsh
that,
words from Brody. Actually,
yeah, this is the tweet that really does like bring the drama to fold. No, it's only in Keemstar's interest. He's hated by every other community, and us working with him won't look good. I have integrity and would rather work harder than sell out to someone like him. Now, I will say off the bat, I don't agree with this notion, because I know that obviously to say that every other community he's worked in is not necessarily true. I mean, the Dramasphere fucking loves him. Obviously, it's literally integral to his product. Although I will say, I actually respect LeafX for saying I'm never going to support this kind of thing, because that is something that he believes in very clearly, and he's having the backbone to say, "Fuck this, I'm not doing it." So. Fair. I mean, again, I can't argue with the man's ethics. Absolutely can't argue with the man's ethics. But I think a lot of the backlash about Keemstar goes a lot deeper than really we could probably discuss on this podcast. So there's a lot of intricacy to Keemstar's current situation and the drama thing, because the drama thing is just something that people buy into. I remember then there was a whole lot of drama coming out about Keemstar as a whole, and there was that whole grade A under A and Leafy is here thing versus Keemstar back in the day. And in the end, it was kind of proven that those kind of things were all liars. So it is a very clouded sort of prospect. There's no real way, in my opinion, that you can just go into approach like absolute hatred for the guy, because there is a lot of like, well, what actually is going on in terms of him as a person,
See, Keemstar, first of all, focuses the business side of entertainment, which is why all that drama, a lot of it is sort of made up. Or I wouldn't say made up, but falsified, exaggerated, all of that sort of terms. So it's not completely clear cut and honest, which, I myself prefer honesty over everything, and wouldn't that some of the drama in the even in Rocket League community, players going off at each other. I'm just there like, grow up. But it's that case of you worry about him coming into the scene. When you look at what he's done with Fortnite previously, has been very controversial in the sense of your opinion on him. Like, yes, it's good to bring in, say, $100,000 to Rocket League, or when he was doing like the 50,000 tournaments for Fortnite, for example. But the way he's exploiting the money from it, and it's all basically in his own personal interest, which is understandable because he is a business. Yeah, that's like he's putting money in. He wants money back. That's business.
Yeah, I mean, like if you said that we had to do things without any personal interest in things, it's kind of fucking retarded, Like let's not get around the fact that even this podcast is technically in our own personal interest, because we do it because we love the game, and that's a selfless personal interest. But if we didn't get pleasure from doing this podcast, then I probably wouldn't be here right now. Certainly I've had to prioritize things above this podcast. As a case in point, last week I was out doing a job. There's a chance there might not even be a podcast next week because I'm doing a job, because that's just how the world works. That's business. That's just economic basics.
We love doing this show, but I mean, it's not actually paying us, So
yeah.
At the end of the day,
of course, if you do want to support us, then feel free to slide into my DMs. I'll send you a PayPal link, and I'll split the money between me, Bacon, Fraser, and Ben. So it's all Gucci. But just sort of to give my own little last thoughts about this sort of like topic and Keemstar as a whole, I recommend you go to Richard Lewis's channel and take a look. He's got an interview, a 2-hour interview with Keemstar. And just fucking stick it on, listen to it, play some Rocket League in the background, and you can hear everything from the other side. Because I think that's the one thing about Keemstar that doesn't get brought up a lot. It's like, what's his perspective on everything? What's his sort of mindset and worldview on things? Because honestly, do you know what? I went when the shit kicked off with Keemstar and everyone tried to get him kicked off of YouTube, and everyone tried to get his sort of like channel buried. Like, there was a lot of misinformation, as I found out earlier, and I was in that sort of camp of like, right, let's get this cunt off the airways, let's get him away. But now that I've come up and I've grown up a little bit, I've seen this story from all angles. There's more to it than initially sort of the surface seems to say,
Yeah, so basically the end result of it is Keemstar's a smart lad, so he's doing stuff to be controversial to back him, to make himself bigger. I would say yes to Keemstar getting involved, but only if it is with a production company like ESP behind him, because I would say I personally don't trust him on his own to be able to sort it out. It's that sort of like, you have to look at it for that sense, because you do worry. Naturally, Psyonix would be in the same boats. They'd be there going, ESP, if you're in charge of this and Keemstar is just, say, a consultant or, part of your company that's arranging, brand deals and all of that, then that's absolutely fine. But if he is the sole one organizing everything, I would say no. And that's purely just because you've got to look at it from that sort of business perspective of one man should not have all that power. Kanye West is a smart dude in the same sense with music, and that reference is so true. I realized where I was going with that and went, nope.
I mean, it's credit to you. That song is fucking epic. I love that song.
It is
no
a
more
good
meant
fucking
to
song.
have all that power. The clock's ticking. I just count that out. I'm not even a hip hop fan, but fuck
No,
it.
you
Right.
gotta love it. Yeah.
So there you go. That's all the news this week. Again, like I said, it's been a pretty big news week, all things considered. There's massive implications for where this could all go from Rocket League. Like, there's some fucking really, really good stuff up to play for. So again, keep your eyes on this space. We'll be covering everything that goes down. There's a lot that will be happening in the new year. I'm very, very excited as to everything about that. So let's move on from the news. Let's get some fan interaction. Of course, you can join our Discord by typing !Discord in the chat, where you can find yourself a bunch of other rabid fans that want to talk all about the Rocket League esports space. And you can also send us a mailbag question or comment or something that we can discuss on the podcast itself. If you listen to the audio version or YouTube version, there are links in the show notes that will take you directly to the Discord server itself. And you can ask questions like Frostbite. He's asked us 2 questions this week. The first we're going to talk about, they're sort of separate but sort of topical, but we're going to talk about them individually. So the first one is, unlike in CSGO, in particular the ESL Pro League, the RLCS relegation matches are online. For the future of competition, is this something that needs to change soon? So I'm going to start with you, Bacon, on this one. What are your thoughts?
So my thoughts are, yeah, there needs to be a lot more weight to these promotion relegation tournaments, and everything purely being online. I think basically with the introduction of the Dreamhack, circuit, maybe this could be a good chance to partner a sort of showcase event alongside them, like add an extra day on for because Dreamhack can be set up, and they generally are set up, days in advance. So maybe using that studio and then being able to back on, but then you get fatigue. I would like to see some sort of event set up, but more like, I'm trying to think how to do it. Because it is a hard question, because a LAN event purely for the promotion relegation, it's not worth it. Essentially, if that makes any sense at all, it's not enough content. You look at it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches. A single day event, it's not going to happen. They're not going to fly out players over to NA to play in this because that's too costly. If you could pack it on like the US stuff, like the NA stuff, onto the finals of their College Gate series, then that would make perfect sense to do as a LAN event, because it would only boost the College Gate stuff up, and of course a LAN event for the NA guys would be cool. But we don't have that over in EU, unless you were to contract in, say, Gfinity to be able to organize it, and then that sort of production cost there would make sense. But it's not feasible for Rocket League at the moment to be able to do that. We're just not at a level where LAN events are being done to that degree. I'm struggling to actually explain myself on this one, Jay.
No, I will take over and sort of talk about that sort of aspect of having a LAN event that is way too costly, because it is way too costly for just relegation. Actually, before, like in previous seasons of EPL, we used to have the playoffs, the relegation playoffs online. We never actually used to have it online. The only reason why it became a LAN, as Frostbite points out in the Twitch chat, is because it just so happens to tie in with the Mountain Dew League Global Challenge, which is where the league below Mountain Dew League, that's where the teams move up from move up to EPL essentially. So they can afford to be like, right, well, the Mountain Dew League is coming to an end. We'll do a big offline playoffs for the league itself, and we'll do the promotions at the same time during that LAN event. So that's where I think it could play into like the RLCS. If you wanted to maybe add an extra day into the RLCS, so we can do those kind of playoffs matches, or maybe even do the playoffs online, do the grand finals as a show match, for example, for the promotion tournament. We talked about show matches at tournaments, and we talked about the idea that maybe the teams that face up against each other, the last 2 teams, maybe they do face up against each other before the grand finals of RLCS. It's like, fuck, you got the whole crowd there, you got people that are highly interested in this stuff, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be a fantastic way to set everybody up for the grand finals. I certainly think that could be a way to go about things,
Yeah, I completely agree. Add Thursday on and then just have that as promotion relegation day. Wednesday's a little bit too much. If you would have to somehow squish 10 games into one day. You can have offline games, at the event, and bring the teams out, show a couple of them, have offline ones, because that is definitely something which we don't see in Rocket League so far, is games going on offline. We saw it in Dreamhack, and I expect that to happen at Dreamhack because you've got so many teams there, but not at the top flight invited like qualified teams to an event. You don't get that. So this could be a route for it, and we just show the 2 qualification matches. So that'd be 4 games on the Thursday, which is just literally these are the 2 teams that are fighting for that for their spots into RLCS next season, and that just adds so much more to the teams. Near enough building them up for it, and it gives them it gives even more reason to be in the bottom half of RLCS, in the top half of RLRS, because you're going to get LAN experience from it, at least. The awkward point there is, like I said, I reckon RLCS is going to transfer into a once a year event in 2020. I think 2019 will be the last time it's going to be twice a year, because I can see them wanting to mix it in with other events, maybe of different calibers, so that RLCS becomes that one pinnacle thing. They can then assign a bigger budget to it, where they only have to pay for one event, maybe see it transfer over to a 10-week stage thing, double round robin, instead of it just being a one single thing. But I think the current format we got is going to stick, and it's just going to be one big premier event, the biggest thing, like the Worlds of League of Legends and all that, but for Rocket League. And to me, that makes sense. If we've got Dreamhack coming in first, I can definitely see ESL coming in later, because it is all lining up with ESL bigging up their, Twitter presence with the ESL Rocket League one that you've seen, all these other ones.
But can you really say that about ESL? All they ever do is post fucking memes ripped off the Reddit. Come on,
Well, they're putting in the effort for what they hardly do anything in currently. They're trying to keep that Twitter presence going, which I think is it. They've got the global connections. We were talking about Asia getting into Rocket League last week, and I can seriously see, if you've ever seen Apex out there, Jay, I could see them taking over, because that would be the perfect sort of size of tournament for them. I can see a lot of things down the road, but it's so faint. You're speculating still. That's the whole point. That's what we're doing now. It's just speculation. But I seriously, the better option with them would be to cut down, say, RLCS to once a season, and RLRS to maybe. I don't want to see that as once a season as well. Once a year, I mean. Because I think that sort of second scene needs to have maybe 2 different events, and you do a longer stage to it. It's a hard one to say with how RLCS should develop.
I think if they are going to make it once a year, then they're going to have to do a lot of revamping of the format. This is the kind of thing that only works for 2 seasons a year. You can't just have a promotion relegation for another year. It's well, GG guys. I mean, more than anything else, it has to work within the context of a major system or an international system, where you have all these different tournaments to feed up to who's going to get the spots at the RLCS. If you're going to have it once a year thing,
you would have basically what is done slightly in other scenes, where you would have the RLCS league play as its own sort of identity, where you play through that and you gather points to then be able to results. So you do it in stages. And then be able to, over the course of 8 months, be able to gain enough points in the teams, and those so at the end of the RLCS teams, you get the shift between RL, RS continuously going, and then be able to gain the points to the second stage, which then the top 4 from that goes to RLCS. So that it's basically a 2-tiered stage system. So the team that gets promoted through the first half of the year does still have the chance to be able to go to LAN, but it's difficult, because it's going to be a case of you would have to come first out in the group to be able to qualify, and then the regional championship series would be relevant, because at the moment I think regionals are a bit naff. You come top 4 in league stage and then you can drop out. To me, that feels a little bit bitter. It's all really weird at the moment how the ecosystem could change out, and I don't like the current format of RLCS. I never have really.
Yeah,
but you've been
I
stuck
think it
with
was
it.
good. I think it was good for the first season and maybe the second season, but not since then. I don't think it's been great. Obviously, we're talking about all these speculating all these points on how things could play out. The truth is, we have no idea how it will actually play out, and and that's probably part of the reason why it's taken so fucking long for someone to change it, because neither do Psyonix have any idea how they want everything to go. So, I mean, to be honest,
you would have to change everything. You couldn't just change one small thing, and that's why it's harder, I think, as well.
I think the bottom line is that we would love to see some LAN playoffs for promotion relegation, but it's less than likely going to actually happen unless we really have a sit down and really just figure out how the fuck things are supposed to go. Because again, in the current landscape of Rocket League, it just doesn't seem viable. Right? Let's move on to our next question.
And see
from Frostbite.
Sit down and work out how this is going to fucking go. That's the transition there, Jay.
Let's move from one problem onto the next problem. We haven't sorted out the first problem, so we just got more problems. That's how this podcast works. So Jay-Z
shit.
Because got 99 problems of Rocket League is most.
But winning ELEAGUE ain't one.
So, because of the lack of LAN events, the mentality of LAN results above online results appears to be less prevalent. Do you expect this mentality to shift more along these lines?
We were actually talking about this a little bit earlier, and how PSG are an online team. They're not a LAN team. They just don't seem to hack it at LAN, and that's a really harsh point for me, thing for me to say, I think. But it's understandable when you don't have that many LAN events to play at. You don't build up that sort of consistency. And this is where I'm super impressed by Weedham Girls at the moment, where they have been able to build it up. Don't get me wrong, Remco's been going to LANs for ages because he's always been around. Ignite got near enough trialed, I would say, through the Gfinity Elite Series. You know, he was in there from season 1. Yeah, because he was a backup for Infused. You know, he's one of the draftee picks, and then just completely through, and then wasn't in this season because he's not in Envy anymore. And their third, Metstar, has been on Complexity, been around for ages. That's good. So this is a team that has finally been able to weather it, and they look like a really strong LAN team. That online performance is about, I would say, middling in top 4 with the other teams. It is their LAN performance, which is pretty darn impressive. And we've seen that from RLCS as well as ELEAGUE now. And this is good for them.
Yeah, and I think that certainly that mentality of LAN results above online results is still there. Like we were talking about one of the other podcasts that we kind of launched around the same time as us was the RLCS podcast by Shogun and Johnny Boy. And a lot of the time when I was listening to that podcast, I was hearing them say, well, I mean, you got to think about results from online and LAN. They often kept bringing that up as like, how does that all come into fruition? But I think the problem with trying to say, comparing a LAN event mentality is the fact that, as you say, there are not enough LAN events. So how can a LAN result be bigger than an online result when online is basically like the forefront dominant fucking thing in the entire
four times the amount of online. Yeah. There is a lot more online results, so you have to kind of weigh them up just about as if not on the same level as LAN results, if not anything more bigger than LAN results, because those are what most of the results that are coming in. That's why we've always pushed, for more LAN events in the scene. We want to see more Dreamhacks, we want to see more ELEAGUEs, we want to see more Northern Arenas. We want to see more of these style events because because traditionally in esports, LAN is the pinnacle of everything. If you go to a LAN and you succeed on LAN, then you've got yourself a legitimate victory because it's completely out of your comfort zone. If I'm playing here on my computer, I'm playing here on my PC, it's like, okay, I can do well, but but that's only because I'm in my comfort zone. I've got my right settings, I've got my right environment, I've got my door shut. No one's going to come interfere with me. No one's going to be chanting my name. No one's going to be shouting the name of my opponents. There's never going to be. Unlike ELEAGUE, you've got your Batmobile as well.
That too, but I think that's where we need to go. To be honest, I think that's where we need to be moving forward into a much more public position, because again, it's the grand stage. LAN events to play that on a stage. So so to have that as a pinnacle of all Rocket League, like that, we need to see more of that more than anything else. And only when we get to that point is when that mentality will shift.
And that's why, at the moment, I don't know if you're actually in that group, but it's stuff like with, say, Epic. We're trying to build that up, trying to get all the bubble players involved with that. You're not in the group.
Am I not in that group?
I'm going to have to get you invited. I'll get you invited to Epic after this. But Epic LAN coming up in February. They themselves are very CS focused because that's where the money's at, aren't they, Jay? But we're trying to big up a little small group of us running the production to try and big it up, because there needs to be more LAN events. And I think this could actually build, I'm looking at Team Secret there where they've got, Tylacto and Flamey on it. And I'm there going, 2 English lads could go along to English LAN events, absolutely rock out of the park, get even more LAN experience. Then after RLRS, make the promotion next season, they'll just come into RLCS and slap everyone about. Like, I could see that down the line, you know? And it is all down to LAN events really get you out of your comfort zone and do build you up. So the problem is that it's not just down to Psyonix to develop more LAN events. It's these other orgs coming in and being, well, it's down to Psyonix to some degree to give these other players in the space the opportunity to make LAN events, and they've just got to basically hand over the control a little bit. But from us, we're trying to do it at a very much small scale, grassroots bit, and build them up, really. And we just got to be able to up Insomnia Epic LAN in the UK as it is anyway. There are a little other few LAN events around, but we haven't been contacted about in the RL community, so I don't know.
well, let's focus back on the initial question itself. Do we expect this mentality to shift? I mean, it's certainly moving in that direction. We're certainly moving to a point where it's like we're starting to see more LAN events crop up, and therefore those are going to be the really prestigious things that we look forward to in the Rocket League scene. But like, we still have to consider at this stage, and especially how it's looking out for 2019, we still have to consider online results as a massive fucking building brick, essentially, for teams and where we weigh them up in the general space, just because there are so many of them. You know, again, I'm going to make the point the comparison to Counter-Strike, obviously, because that's just what I fucking do. The reason why many rankings only consider LAN performance is because there are enough LANs to the point where we can use that as a measuring stick, and that alone. We can't do that with Rocket League.
Like, whenever I look at top flight CS, there's more LAN events than online events. I think like that actually matter. I'm saying top flight. You know, all your majors are online. In Rocket League, like, you've got RLCS, you're going to have DreamHack there, and then you've got everything else going on around, which is online, unless it's got a big sponsor behind it. So that's why I'm saying I'm looking at ESL here to start bringing this stuff up, because Psyonix has identified that LAN events are massively important, and this is why they're building it up. So in a year's time, maybe the start of 2020, I'm expecting LAN to suddenly be the one with value. At the moment, it's all online.
I won't say that. I won't go that extreme. I'll say that's when we start to see the shift, when we start to really notice like a noticeable difference in the shift in mentality. But as it stands, obviously, we have to cover all the online results because that is what makes up most of the shit. So there we go. Thank you very much for your questions, Frostbite. But we're not done with the mailbag. Of course, Dexter messaged us in as well, talking about We Dem Girls. So massive spoilers for those of you who don't want to watch to the end of this one and know exactly who won E-League. Psst, it was We Dem Girls. But We Dem Girls, with We Dem Girls winning the ELEAGUE Cup, the org talk has obviously intensified. But could this roster potentially have enough long-term success to be better off relying on pure prize money than letting an organization take their cut and offer a salary? I honestly, I looked at this question. I didn't really know what to make of it at first. So, Bacon, I'm going to let your opinion start things off again.
Rumors has it they're already in talks with an org. I'm not going to say that, you know, on the stream, of course.
That instantly throws bias into my opinion. Then, for fuck's sake.
But what I would love, and this is like, if I wanted something, it would be Rocket League's first own independent team org. You know, this is what I would love Rocket League to be able now of a level to do, is We Dem Girls actually establishing the org We Dem Girls independently to themselves and start, you know, getting in sponsors, you know, Logitech, AMD, Intel, whatever, to make a We Dem Girls org between them. And I would love that so much, because We Dem Girls is such a sort of completely out there name as an org as it is. They'd be brilliant, but I know they're looking at these orgs, and there is one org definitely closing in on a deal, and that's why I can't remember who said it, but it was a slap in the face. I think it was Cloudfuel might have said it or whatever. That were close to doing a deal with them, but didn't sign it before E-League, and now it's like, you're looking silly. You should have signed them beforehand, and then you would have had the championship winning team, you know, under your name, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a world where maybe if the players really worked on it and really fucking like got themselves into a business mindset, then they might be able to get some sponsors for We Dem Girls. But that's a very, very far gone situation. Like a very,
We're not
very
at that level
far gone
yet,
situation.
Really.
Like when I think of player-owned organizations, the first one that springs to my head is Astralis. And Astralis only works because it wasn't just the players that own the organization. They also had a manager and a coach and a social media dude and a video dude. Like, there's so many other components that make
They
up
had the connections,
an organization. They had the connections, they had that, the vision, and they had the resources to pull it together. But you don't really have that same sort of structure in you don't have that same sort of structure in Rocket League at this point. Like for We Dem Girls is just Ignite, Remco, it's just those three guys. It's literally just them. Like there's no channel, there's no Twitter account, there's no videographer that's doing stuff about them specifically. There's nothing of that sort of nature. And even when you take a look at the player-owned organization of Astralis, the reason why they have the only reason why they have the resources is because they're not actually technically player-owned. The company that's actually facilitated them is a company called Refresh. So technically, it's not completely independent.
They've got stocks in their own org. That's essentially how it works with them, isn't it? Like they are part ownership of their own brand, but they're not full ownership. They're allowed to make their own decisions and everything with it, like as a whole, but they do still have some responsibility by, like you said, Refresh and that, where they still have to follow what they say because they're the ones giving them money. Essentially, at the end of the day, that's what talks is the money. But they're trusted enough because they're getting the results to make their own decisions about what they do, which, is fair enough. If We Dem Girls can keep, getting the results, let's just say they go on and win Leipzig, then that potential becomes a little bit bigger, but I'm expecting them to be picked up by Leipzig, to be quite honest.
To be honest, I think the main problem with that, however, is the fact that they have to be completely dominant. Like they have to be dominant for years.
They would have to do a Dignitas.
They'd have to do a Dignitas and then some. Like they'd have to do a Dignitas and then some, because Dignitas were bankrolling their way to fucking finals. They were doing incredibly well. And I would say someone like a Dignitas probably could have done it on their own right, on their own terms. But that's also assuming they won this last gone Worlds. That's assuming they won this last gone E-League. That's when I could have thought to myself, okay, maybe that would have been a possibility. But because we've never seen a team do that in that kind of fashion, I still have my doubts. And even then, if they were able to do something like pick up a sponsor and get like some amazing fucking brand behind them to pay them loads and loads of money to basically like fund their own salaries, then all that negotiation and business aspect of things are going to take away from their time practicing. So can they really be a dominant enough team for a sponsor just to sponsor them individually as a completely independent Rocket League team? There's a lot of factors to factor into a situation, a scenario like this. I just don't see it being that possible at all, Yeah,
because the only thing I can say about Dignitas that, like, for them that would be able to do it is because they've got their own independent manager. That's to them, not to Dignitas. I can't remember her name. Melissa Kong or something? Melissa, that's it.
Was it Melissa? I'm pretty sure it was Melissa Kong.
Yeah, something like... If she's listening, sorry, I forgot your name.
On Twitter.
Jay's going to look it up. But she is stuck with them. She was at Gale Force with them, and then, is with them now. That's fair enough. So that's how you see it. It's a bit like Melina. It is a bit like Melina. Goodness.
There you go.
Sorry, nose dude. But it's a bit like, Savage have Ronarchy. It's... I'm fucking thinking a base with Red Reserve. That's the thing of where you start building up your own team. So not only are you a team of players, you've also got a manager that will stick with you when you change orgs. You might have a couple of graphics dudes that will stick with you. So that's when you start building it up. So you can, where you've got that loyalty to you as a team to be able to move with, and other orgs are buying you as a whole package. It's a bit like in bigger esports. You'll notice you'll buy some players, but also that manager comes across, the coaches come across. We're not there with Rocket League to be able to do that realistically, and so that's why it's just easier to get picked up by an org, and they're just going to be able to fund everything and supply you with what you actually need as players, because the players don't need money to essentially go off to the LAN event. Well, they don't just need that money to go off to the LAN events. They need coaches and managers and everything like that to be able to supply them with everything they need, so that they can just purely focus on the 9 to 5 playing Rocket League. And even then, it's longer than that. You're not just putting 8 hours a day into Rocket League. These players, if they're actually serious about it, are putting in 10, 12 hours a day. you know, they have to live and breathe Rocket League if they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, well, no, I guess I hope that's answers the question really of how possible we really think it is, and in short, it's not. So
we'd love it, but
you
no.
Yeah, no, I mean, we love the optimism at least. You know, maybe 5 years down the line we might be in a position with that in Rocket League, but as it stands right now, probably not. But thank you regardless for your question, Dexter. Again, if you want to go ahead and send us a question in the mailbag section of our Discord, there's exclamation mark Discord in the Twitch chat. Of course, if you're listening to the audio or video versions of this podcast, we will have links in the description for you to follow and join our Discord of, I don't even know how many people we've got in the Discord right now. Right, let's move on from mailbag questions into our feature of the week. And we're going to be talking about the Neon Dream. We kind of left this one a little bit on the sidelines for a couple of weeks, where we left where we allowed the qualifiers or the drafts to go on. And we have our 32 teams that have made it through to the Corporation Clash. From Team Gemini, I'm just going to run through the big fuck off list so we can try and see if I can go through this.
You just said Team Gemini, dude. You're working on this and you've just gone Team Gemini. I hate you so much.
I'm a fucking idiot. I apologize. I apologize to all the people from Rewind.
Star Force Gemini, Libra Galaxy, Leo Enforcers, and Scorpio Tech. These are corporations.
It does not say this on the Liquipedia page. Okay, so do not fucking blame me that hard. Okay. I've also had a really long day because I was just on HUD. Okay, so fuck you. So
can't wait to see that actually. Yeah.
So in the Gemini group, we've got Team Echo Zulu, Ember EC, AS Monaco, French Fries Pizza, and I forget the last word in that name. Vertex, Colon D, Corax Gaming, and Savage. From Libra, we've got Rescue Whales, Method, Stratus going forward, Igneous, the Rejects, Washed Up Boys, and Team Firewall. From Leo, we've got Epsilon something, D Baron Bonkers, Getafe CF Esports. To be honest, Bolo, Nordavin Public. And on Scorpio, we've got Reza Gaming, XL, Schmookly, Ebcon, Squad PPE, Upsla, Samping, and I don't know anymore. Right. Are these the final seedings, Bacon? This is what I want to ask you to kick things off.
Right,
these
okay,
are the final seedings, right?
This is actually a good point. So the original seeding system we had was based off of the Grand Prix seeding, and then it looked pretty much roughly the same. It was basically based on turnouts in each day. So the first day for the first draft, it was stacked with teams. Second and third day, teams were DQ and left, right, and center where they just didn't turn up, and the pro teams didn't really show up. And then fourth day, teams showed up again. So our original idea for a seeding system, which was the highest seed from each day would be the highest seed in each of the leagues. And then, you know, you get the idea. It'd be seeded from each day into different leagues and adjusted like that. We came around after the third day. We're like, yeah, this ain't going to work. We just had to near enough put up with all the players shouting at us until it finally finished up. And then went, yeah, we're changing this. You know, you don't just say halfway through, oh, we're changing it. No, just go quiet on that. And then after it's over, we go, don't worry. We knew this all the way. It weren't going to work. And we were just basically trying not to stumble over. And like, we basically knew at the end, that was when you're just going to basically be able to, it's the best time to know, go, this is what we're going to do. So we thought after the first day, yeah, this is quite stacked. After the second day, okay, no one showed up, because we're going to go on to this point with the Rival Autumn Open. Teams at the moment are just forfeiting straight left, right, and center, and it's a big problem with Rocket League in the community scene. After the third day, having the same problem, yeah. So we've seen the problem. We had to go to Psyonix, remember, and ask, is it okay to reseed? Because even though we're running the tournament, Psyonix have to approve everything we're doing because it is their Renegade Cup. Remember, we're sort of like, we've got the rights to use their brand, if that makes sense. It's a bit weird, but yeah, we got that and it was absolutely fine. And so we just did a reseed because we want to put on the best tournament. So reseeding it is the best option. So we're happy with what we got now. Everything was put through not only an MMR sort of system. We did that originally to seed out the teams, and then went, nope, let's move that around, you know, because some teams, like, I want to say, I'm trying to think of like a team to use as an example. Like, to be honest, which is Stocky, Coca, and Rizex, they have really high seeds because they're really high on MMR, but they don't weigh as high as, you know, XL as your Savage, really, do they? Because they're bubble players, but ranked isn't the exact same. So we've gone through multiple different seeding ways to get out on this, and I quite like the look of the different corps at the moment. They all look pretty good, and the one thing I do love looking at this is that there's there's only 2 spots in each group to be promoted into the top 8, you know. And I'm looking at this, and we could see 4 teams in each league, in each corp, to near enough make it through, which is quite exciting, I think, going forward.
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of intense competition over the next couple of weeks. Obviously, for those who don't know how the format works, each of these corporations essentially act as groups. So we'll play a round robin, best of 5 for each of the teams, and the top 2 that comes out, obviously, we'll get the higher and lower seed for the Corporation Clash playoffs. So, do you know what? I can see in some of these groups a potential of 4 teams that can make it through. So, as you say, I'm very, very excited to see how things play out and how this whole thing is gonna and who's actually gonna be able to take those top spots, because there are some groups, there are some corporations like Scorpio, for example. To be honest, honestly, there are 3 teams I probably could see like taking a really good chance at that top spot. You know,
for me in Scorpio, let's just quickly do the rundown. Like of each, to quickly bang out who we think. Reason Gaming have looked shaky, so they could get their spot knocked off. XL look really good with Breezy. Their problem,
but
like
are they
the reason why they
Breezy?
Yeah, he's confirmed, he's locked in. They only have those 3 on the roster on Smash, and they can't add any more on now. Again, this is a massive oversight from XL, who, you know, you would have thought might have learned from their mistakes in the past, but they've only got Niels, Pondex, and Breezy on the roster, which pretty much to me is a very strong highlight.
I'm just going to interject and say, if they get DQ'd again, just fuck you, XL.
Learn, you dumb. Players are dumb. This is the saying. Like, I will wholeheartedly, we need that as a command. Players are dumb, and they need to learn from this. But basically, recent XL, Team Sampi, which is Namon, Devix, and Dave is looking good. I don't know anymore. Chris, Petrick, and Junior. Smoothly, we've seen before. MCon can always throw a spanner in the works. Squad PP is probably the weakest of this, but they're still pretty good. And Upsla, again, probably one of the weakest. So for me in that group, you've got 6 potential candidates in Scorpio that could go through, you know?
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole thing exciting, because I think there's actually a lot of competition that can be spread out amongst these groups. So, yeah, I think the seeding is much better than the last one. I didn't catch much of the last one, but I can definitely tell already this is a massive improvement based off of what I was hearing.
Oh, yeah, we knew it was trash beforehand. It was like, on paper, this is going to work. You know, it's based on previous tournaments. But like I said, where players have just been DQ'd and not showing up, it ruins it. So you just got to accept that and move on.
Yeah, well, there are a couple of teams that I want to just quickly bring to the fold very quickly before we move swiftly on. So just a couple of teams that I kind of want to see really good things out of. I want to get your opinions on them. Schmookly are back, which is massive. Obviously, they had a massive run in the Grand Prix, but they weren't there in the Thunderdome. So right now they've got a few points to make up.
I'm going to just say, Smoothly lose their points from the original one because they've got rid of Sacred and they brought in Sniper to the roster, if you remember Sniper.
God. Well, they got a lot of points to make up. That's a little bit confusing, honestly. I wasn't expecting that.
One thing I really do not understand with the whole of the Renegade Cup, everyone should know by now that you change players, you forfeit your points, you know? Even one player, if 2 stick together, you still forfeit your points. Players don't care about that rule, and this has really thrown Psyonix for a hoop, because this was them basically hard forcing teams to stick together. You know, they wanted teams to build chemistry, thinking this is how you're going to build depth into RLRS and build up the future, because there was very much this season a hard top 4 and bottom 4. This was them trying to build that up, and it's backfired on them quite hard.
Seems so. There might have to be some rule changes for the next Renegade Cup. That's very, very weird. Actually, now that you mention it, because XL made their change, does that not mean that they forfeit all their points? Like, actually, shit, this whole thing could be thrown into a loop for the grand finals.
This is again why the whole system is dumb. Psyonix knows this, and it will be changed for any future. Like, it's got to stick as the rules throughout the whole of this Renegade Cup, and they're quite happy. They're looking to continue this into the future. So Renegade Cup is here to stay as like the 3rd tier behind RLRS. But XL is the example. Lost out in the first, of course, due to the DQs. When they added their subs into the Thunderdome, they lost their points there because they had added extra players to the roster. And then, of course, they're just there going, now, who cares? Add Breezy because he's going to be our next in line. He's seemingly better than Marky in their eyes. So they have had to reset their points again. Players really do not care about them losing their points. They just don't care. It's weird.
It's very weird, honestly. Like, I would expect, honestly, because the theory here is that if they play in one, they have to stick it through with the rest of that team, so that way they can keep those points and keep their chances. But Schmookly for this, that might throw them out of the contention for the finals. That might also throw Excel out of contention for the finals.
I just thought, sorry, Epsilon, have been so up and down. They look to stick together. So this is a team that is inconsistent. But
oh my god!
purely being the most consistent team of actually sticking together are probably going to be in the Renegade Cup finals. I think that is the best bit of irony in all of this.
That really is. That is. Oh my god. Well, obviously we'll take a look at the points breakdown at some point. I was going to bring more sort of like more teams to the fold as well, because there are some squads that I really wanted to cover, but to be honest, we're very short on time. So we're just going to move on. We have to move on. So again, that's the Neon Dream. It comes up into the first day of league play on Wednesday, which I'm going to be covering, so I'm going to be there for it. Make sure you tune in. It's going to be fantastic, of course. Twitch.tv/rewindrl. And now let's talk about the tournaments that we've missed out on, because we have missed out on a lot, to be honest. Like a couple of weeks ago, obviously we didn't do a live podcast because I was away. I was doing other things. I was in Coventry for an event. And things just kind of didn't work out the way that we wanted them to. So I was busy then. I'm going to be busy. I'm also going to be busy next week as well. So we might have to do another tournament catch-up episode back-to-back. So that's going to get quite fun. But we do want to go back in time a little bit and focus on a very exciting online event that went down in the online circuit. Obviously, we're talking about Rival Esports and their Autumn Open. We had an EU and an NA version, although the NA version got cancelled and EU got half cancelled. As one of my first general points as well for this fucking shit. My new trigger word is forfeit now, because we had all this bollocks in the Renegade monthlies and the Renegade Cup so far. It's been all forfeits all across the board. We had loads in Grand Prix. We had way too many than there should have been in the fucking Thunderdome. And we've also had it to the point in the EU Open where we didn't even, the NA Open, sorry, we didn't even have to, we actually had to cancel the tournament on Rival. And for the EU Open, they actually had to cancel the Swiss system and just auto-promote everybody in from that Swiss system that actually bothered to show up. And that should absolutely not be the way a tournament should be won. And this is the worst part about it as well is the fact that the list of teams that forfeit include the likes of XL and Firewall and To Be Honest. And those three teams in particular were actually directly invited to the Swiss stage. They didn't even have to open qualify. So of all the teams you'd expect to actually step up and actually fucking play in the tournament, it would be those three. But
yeah, basically that sort of the qualification stage was meant to be there in case we had, I think it was, roughly like over 20 teams, because we had to find out. I think we're just doing a 16-team Swiss system, originally, and 18 teams signed up. So we went, okay, we'll just have an 18-team Swiss system. 8 teams just got straight up DQ'd. So we just went, because they didn't show up on day. So we just went, we'll just push 10 through to the next bit, and we'll just have 4 teams have to fight out for their spots and whatnot, try and add an extra stage to it to make it so there was 8 teams into the round of 12. And it's just so dumb, players. I don't get why. For the Renegade Cup stuff, I understand why players DQ, because they just sign up for all 4 of them, for Neon Dream, for example, and then just don't turn up on some days because they've got another chance. If you have only got one chance to sign up to this tournament, stick to it. I don't get that, why you would sign up and then just not show on the day. Maybe you'll get 1 or 2 teams that might think like that, but having so many teams, it's ridiculous. And I just don't get the mentality of players in Rocket League at the moment, whether it's just pure laziness. I don't know.
It's pissing me off is the thing that it's doing to me right now. Like I said, my new trigger word is forfeit. If I ever see a fucking forfeit result, I'm gonna have a fucking aneurysm grow out the side of my head, like Yukio was having in the middle of ELEAGUE. I don't know if you saw that clip.
Yeah.
he has a massive forehead vein. But I digress. But it's fucking ridiculous, And of course, that I shouldn't have to say this shit, but extra special shout out to Team Secret, who actually bothered to turn up. But why should I have to shout out a team for turning up to a fucking tournament?
The whole story of Team Secret.
They were already invited to.
Yeah, no, Secret turned up and they had already told us way beforehand, we're excited for this, purely because they knew this was good grinding experience against RLCS teams for them. They were like, okay, we can just, absolutely clap the bubble teams because it's Secret. But they were like, RLCS teams are invited to this. This is great experience for us. That should be the same exact story for every one of the RLRS teams and the bubble teams to be there like, okay, this is the best experience we are going to get. Knowing that you're going into this and probably not going to get the part of that $1,000 prize pool because it only goes to the top 2 teams is not your concern. It should be the experience and learning and improving, because if you're just forfeiting on, before turn up, you're not gaining anything. You're going to stay as a bubble player. I'm being very harsh on this, but it is so true.
It's true. It's true.
You're
as
not
harsh
going to
as you
improve.
want, it's the whole point of the podcast.
And what annoys me as well is it's these same players that also go, oh, I'm not improving at Rocket League. I'm giving up. I'm quitting. Then 2 days later, sign up for Gfinity. Just no, you do not have the mentality to go pro. You're holding yourself back. You have to change how you act, change your own mentality if you want to go pro. Otherwise, just don't bother. Like, you're a waste if you're being like, I'm very harsh about it, but I've seen this for the last year and it's tiring.
Exactly. It's frustrating as well because, like, we in the bubble scene have been pushing for more bubble tournaments. We've been pushing for more monthlies. We've been pushing for shit like the Renegade Cup.
We push for the Renegade Cup so much.
Yeah. We all rallied behind this fucking idea. As soon as we heard about it, right. Let's do it, boys. Let's come up with a game plan. Let's make this Renegade Cup the best thing that the bubble scene's ever had. And then when we see shit like this, it's like the players, it feels like you do not give a shit. And that is the worst part about it, like Rival did not get sponsored by Psyonix to do this. They did this off their own fucking back. They put on a banger of a tournament prior to this. They put on bangers of weeklies prior to this, and they have it spat back in your face. I wasn't on the talent team for that tournament. Obviously, you were, but I imagine. But if I was, I feel absolutely insulted that just got spat back at me. Just like, mate, do you know what? Just absolutely fuck you.
And on a serious note, this is also part in term why you're seeing orgs, casters, and that start to dwindle in numbers. I've noticed this just at Rewind. Like, we're starting to see, and at Rival as well, being part of the team, we're starting to see casters just not show up anymore. Like, they've lost the will to take part in this because one, tournament organizing is a thankless sort of like job. You get into it, you understand that. But literally, when it's a thankless job and you've got people sort of like not showing up, you're not spitting on you in a lot of sense, because that's what it does feel like when you can't even be bothered to, like, if you can't show up to the tournament, Danny said it in chat, casters are fed up with this crap. Tournament organizers, if you are on Smash DG, just please unsign your team. Like, just all it takes is one player just removing themselves from Smash.gg so that team doesn't go through to the next stage. If your Rival don't even use their old system where you would have to get in contact with a mod or something. So just remove one player from that roster if you can't do it. Like, literally, it would be so much help. Because when you get this tournament that then goes up and you've got half the teams DQ and you're instantly just there like, why do we bother with this? And it is starting the Rocket League community is starting to get a bit fed up, aren't they?
Yeah, better still, play the fucking tournament. If you're going to sign up for something, make sure you're committed in the full frontal. Make sure you're going in deep and you're going in hard, because if you're not ready to give 100%, the next guy will give 100%. And the next guy's going to get the opportunities that you didn't. I learned that the hard way, right? I've been in this industry for 3
He's going to get the
years.
orgs that you didn't as well, because we're starting to see a lot of smaller orgs. Don't get me wrong, it's not massive money, but it's backing to when you've got the pro circuit.
As you say, it's backing. It's a start,
Like, here, don't get me wrong, I'm just about to call out 2 teams right now which aren't showing this problem, Stratus and French Fries. But they're the teams which these orgs are now looking at the Dreamhack circuit and going, okay, we can sponsor them for this one event, to get our name going across. We saw it with London Esports. Can you remember that last time? I know Wind and Rain are a potential org which are looking at this as well, which I love Wind and Rain as an org. They're quite good lads. But it's these orgs that are looking at it and going, okay, we'll just send them off to a single Dreamhack as promotion for us, and you as players get a free trip to Leipzig. Don't go shitting on everything here. You're actually ruining your own chances to do these experiences. And yeah, Veritas did it with Leipzig as well. You're ruining your own chances to get there, because these orgs aren't going to be looking at the best teams per se. They're going to be looking at the ones which they can trust and rely upon to represent them at these events.
Yeah, man. Like it's frustrating because it's like shooting yourself in the foot without knowing that the gun's even loaded. Like it's
Yep.
just dumb. It is so dumb, and I'm sick and tired of it. I really am sick and tired of it. Play your fucking tournaments or don't sign up. It's easy as that. It's easy as that. With that being
I just
said,
love how you said that. It made me think of like, a mum going, eat your vegetables. It's like that sort of thing. Play your tournaments, you'll get big and strong and you'll be able to compete in the RLRS one day. Now go to bed.
Well, before we go to bed, we actually are going to focus on how the tournament actually played out, because obviously there was a bracket. It's been up on the screen for the past 15 minutes. And you can see how everything went down. So obviously, I think most of this bracket pretty much played out as expected. We were obviously, the point is that
apart from one semi in the finals,
apart from one of the semis and the finals, obviously we saw a couple of things go a little bit awry, but for the most part, I think that everyone kind of ended off where they needed to end off. A lot of the teams that were in sort of that were in the bracket and they played out, and the teams that came through the qualifiers ended up falling in the round of 12 or the quarterfinals in certain cases, which is obviously a nice overperformance from them. And but for the most part, everything is kind of as it should be, with the exception of some of those results. So we're going to start off by talking about Mouse Sports, because they lost to Team Secret and they lost pretty fucking close.
I actually am not worried about Mouse Sports here.
I'm not.
I want you to say your reason, then I'll counterject it, if that's the right term for it. Yeah. Afterwards. So why are you so worried about Mouse Sports then here?
Well, here's the thing about Mouse Sports is that they started off with a lot of momentum, and they started off by kicking and screaming in the RLCS, taking upsets and taking names, taking a game off Dignitas, which is like, at that point in time, it was completely unheard of that anyone could even hold a candle to Dignitas. But since that sort of hype has come through, they fizzled out by quite a lot. And it's a certain case to be made that this former Civet squad is going to go right back into the RLRS, where things aren't looking great for them, and again, they lost to Team Secret, a team that had their struggles and couldn't quite make it into the RLCS, where Mouse Sports are at right now. In terms of just general rankings and the way that matchup should play out, you expect Mouse Sports to be able to win overall, but Secret were the ones that ended up taking the victory and moving on to the semifinals. I am quite worried for the future of Mouse Sports. It's the same way I'm worried about the future of XL and Fnatic because of results like this.
Oh, on that note, I am worried about the future of Fnatic. Not XL. I think Breezy is only going to be good for them, and I see them, if they can keep up their current line of form.
We can talk about that later on down the line.
But
we have some points about the Gfinity Elite Series.
Mouse, the reason they're actually using this tournament properly, like well good, because they're currently trialing out replacements for Skyline. Sorry, Skyline, it's the writing's on the wall that the other two, Alex and T-Ray, think they basically need a more star player, someone that's going to be a striker, someone that's going to be an explosive force. And they've been trying now, Siki, and there's a lot of talk about ditching complexity, which for me, I don't want him to ditch complexity because that make me feel like a little bit worse about a lot, but it makes sense to get back up into the RLCS. Every player that's going to be demoted, if they can get back up to RLCS, you can't blame them for doing it, That's just how it is. But that's what Mouse Sport are doing. So they've trialed Siki in this and lost the Secret. So for me, this makes sense. Secret sticking together, like I said, Secret are a bottom half RLCS team against a bottom half RLCS team here. Ended 3-2. They were fielding, a sub / a new tryout. This went the way, like I would have said, it was a very 50-50 game. So Secret taking it 3-2 makes sense. More impressive for me is Secret 4-2 losing to Weedham Gales. Weedham Gales a massively powerful side, and Secret getting 2 games in a very, very close series. Apart from that last one, which the game, trying to count it out in my head, the game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Went 5-1 to Weedham Gales, where Weedham Gales finally just turned it on, realized how to beat Secret and smashed them out. That's the difference between a top half RLCS team and a bottom half RLCS team. Secret, I'm confident in them. They're absolutely doing fine. The real upset was PSG taking down Flipside. It was a close series, but Flipside to me seemed to be a stronger team. PSG, they can just have great days online. And this was one of them for them.
Yeah, I was going to bring that into fruition as well. Like the flip side, falling pretty hardcore in those semifinals. It was a much farther affair than the Mouse Sports Secret game. 4-0, and some of these games being at least a 2 or 1 goal difference. So there's certainly been an overperformance from a PSG and something that we didn't expect. And as you say, it's sort of that online sort of that online mentality or that online is sort of like history that PSG sort of has when they can perform very well online. Online is where the things really start becoming problems. Obviously, we're talking about ELEAGUE in a minute. But is this as expected or as shocking as I think it was, or maybe it was a bit more of a softer blow, all things considered?
This is the potential PSG, essentially. So come round to, again, Dreamhack Leipzig is going to be the real true test of everything, because PSG now should have a bit of experience about lands in them. Chaucer and Farah have always struggled. Fruity, you got to remember, RLCS was his first time at a proper LAN. Or no, did he go to Leipzig last year? I can't remember. I think maybe with another team. I can't remember so much, but as a team, And so Leipzig, I'm expecting them to come back harder him, but that would be the true example of if they're a online team or offline team, you get that stigma about yourself. Flip side, again, this was a very close it was a sweep, don't get me wrong, by PSG, but 2-0, 1-0, 2-1, 2-1. That's a close series. It's just, the blatant 4-0 doesn't show that. And the same with Weedham Girls, where they won 4-2, but the last 2 games they won was 1-0 and 2-1 in overtime to take it. So this was PSG playing very, very well. Weedham Girls playing the normal game, it seemed like. They weren't excelling, but they weren't doing bad. It was just Weedham Girls playing their own game. And this was a tournament that was a great little preview, I think, for what is to come, because PSG are a top. It's they've swapped places with Vitality, really, haven't they, this season?
I mean, certainly that's the argument to make right now. PSG obviously do have a little bit more left in the tank. I certainly think, I've been excited about Fruity's edition for the longest time. Just hasn't quite lined up for them. But, this tournament victory for them is going to be fantastic, obviously, to speak about and take a look into what the future holds for the PSG side. So, that was the Rival Esports Autumn Open. Shame about the NA Autumn Open. Unfortunately, that never actually ended up happening again. See the earlier run that we just had about 5 minutes ago. But yeah, let's move on from that and talk about the Gfinity Elite Series, because this past gone week we had our final league play day, and we have the final standings for the group stage overall. So from Group A, we've got Method coming in first, Envy and Reason pulling in the second and third positions, and top 3 rounding out for that group. Excel and Men of Vitality rounding out the 4th and 5th positions. And in Group B, we've got Fnatic soaring ahead of everybody else. And Nordavind, Epsilon rounding out those top 3, and Hashtag and ROG going down in the bottom 2, and they will not be making it to the playoffs. So a bunch of storylines I want to cover on this one particularly. I'm going to start with Vitality as well, because we have been harking on those guys for fucking weeks. Nothing's changed, nothing's improved, and then this happens. They lose to Excel, who I thought to myself, if the lowest place in the Vitality would go out of, it would be against, it would be like second to last. There's no way they should be able to get beaten out by Excel, but they did lose to Excel, and then the week after, they lost to Envy in relatively dominant fashion. Like, fuck, what's happened to this team, man? It's just gotten worse and worse week after week. You'd hope there'd be demo review, you'd hope there'd be practice, you'd hope this roster would be able to improve, because they are world-class talents on this team. But it's just not working, man. It's just not working.
And unlike, say, the likes of Excel, where, they've got the excuse, week 3, they had to make 2 subs. McLovin replacing Pondex technically, and Breezy now replacing Marky Dudar. So Excel, after the first 2 weeks, where they had seen a loss, trying to think, the second week they didn't play because that was their bye week. But after that, they sort of after that first week, they had already decided to bring in Breezy, and then had to take the loss in week 3. But it was a very close game. It was 3-2 in favor of Envy. Yeah. So that's not like Excel expected against these teams in that sort of situation to lose. And then they went on, beat Vitality, lost to Reason, and Reason played nuts good on that day. He's just Excel, you can't blame in this situation. Don't get me wrong, they came the same result as Vitality, but this is a change in Excel. And when you're making those changes, you're expected to take losses because it takes a while to work out. Vitality didn't have that same excuse. They had 1 week, week 3, where they'd had to sub in Junior to play for Pashi. They were against a fully lined up Method, so yeah, it's Method. You would expect that loss, there when you're playing up with a sub, and you're playing technically with 2 subs because Nexo is the Gfinity player. They don't have Scrub on that side, so Fairy Peak being the only main player of that team. But yeah, for them, Vitality shouldn't be in this situation. Even with Nexo, they should have been coming out in, I would imagine, 2nd and 3rd place, because Method were always sort of like gunning for that top spot. Envy got very close, and that was quite scary, I reckon, to the other teams. And this Envy roster has so much potential to them, but Vitality, I just don't know what's going on at the moment. I actually feel sorry for Gregan in this situation, because he's the manager, man, and he's having to deal with this. And I don't think Gregan lined up a fantastic team, and he's not a coach to this team. You've got to remember that. That's not his role. I just don't know where to go with that roster. Like Fairy Peak, Pashi, and Scrub, with Nexo as the sub to the main team and the Gfinity player, I just don't know. Like, I can't see there a change to make as such. Like, Fairy Peak has just had a shite season, really. But I reckon he's the player to go, because Scrub Killer's the next up and comer. Everyone knows it. Everyone can see it. He'll be of age, you would think, for Gfinity next season. I just don't know, and that's why.
Real quick, hold on. I'm just going to verify that.
He's a spring baby, and that's going to be when Gfinity comes back next. But this just basically
spring baby.
Yeah. So this is like where I think I said it before. I reckon Fairy Peak's going to get picked up by another RLCS. Like, I'm surprised we haven't seen Mouse, trialing him out, because this would be the explosive player that Mouse needs to become big. I don't know why they're going for a lot. If you're going for that complexity roster, it would be Magnus, and Magnus just needs a player to continuously try and set him up. You have Metza beforehand, who was just a wingmate, a wingman to him. Greasy doesn't have that attitude, nor does a lot, really. But you could see one of these 2 lads, Alex or Tigre, just with that mindset where they want to achieve, just going, okay, one of us just takes the back, takes that 3rd man position, and we just feed Fairy Peak. We take him from that skinny, lanky, hairy lad and just make him a big fatto with all that feeding, because he can score goals. He can defend, and you've just got to have that mindset. I think that is one problem maybe with Rocket League players, is that they just want to win, but they don't see that you've got to become a backseat to do that winning. It's a bit like why I think Pashi is great on that roster, because he will try to feed Fairy Peak, but he's also having to feed Scrub Killer, and he just doesn't have, the food rations to do it, really.
Yeah, I will say if there's one roster move I had to make for Vitality, it probably would have to be Fairy Peak, as you say. Like, he has had a bit of a shit season, but I think that the team's odds are going to increase in the Gfinity Elite Series when Scrub Killer does come of age. His birthday is actually on May the 8th, so he might not, depending on when the season starts. In short, I don't know what the rules specifically on Gfinity are, whether they are going to allow that sort of thing, because he'll turn of age during the season. We don't even know when the dates of the next season are. They could be the dead set in February, going on to in the winter time, or they could be in the summer. They could be, we don't know just yet, but just based off the game of odds. I don't know if he'll be of age for next season. Maybe the season after that for certain, but for next season, that's a long time for Vitality to wait, especially when they're not doing well in RLCS, especially when they're not, when the same problems are cropping up with their main roster as well. There's not a lot of hope at the moment. There's really not a lot of hope whatsoever.
I disagree with that. I say there is hope, because they're in RLCS next season. They're going to be in Gfinity next season, because you pay for your spots there, and their main roster isn't going to be dropped by Vitality. My weird point to it is Vitality is a French org which loves pulling that French card, and they'd be dropping them only main team French player in Fairy Peak. I mean, Fairy Peak, I think, because they always bring in Pashi for or Gregan for the main big on screen stuff. So I think Fairy Peak doesn't help them for their brand, which as an org you have to think about on that same side. For me, there's no real reason not to try out a new player over Fairy Peak. Fairy Peak's a solid player. You're going to stick in the bottom half of RLCS with him. But if Vitality wants to go on, want to win RLCS, want to win Gfinity, they need a new player.
Yeah, that's certainly what I'm going to say. I'm going to stick with that one. So, we thought the Champions Curse was dead, but Vitality still seems to affect them by pretty bad amounts. Champions of last season out in last place this season. I mean, I guess you could say you can only go
not
up
last
from
place, maybe ninth because the ASUS team got 5 wins, 10 losses.
Tied last.
Vitality got
tied
6
last.
wins.
Tied last. So hashtag. Let's talk about that team.
Yeah.
I'm getting serious Mouse Sports vibes from hashtag right now because they came in at the start of the season knocking every single match out of the fucking ballpark. 3-0 against Aces, 3-1 against Nordavind, looking amazing in other cups, including the Thunderdome and such. And then they had a break for week 3. And then they got destroyed by Epsilon. And then they got destroyed by Fnatic. This, maybe, I think the hype was killed faster than it did with Mouse Sports. What the fuck happened here?
So this is an interesting one because the hashtag roster is the Rescue Wales roster, but with hashtag is with EXO, Rescue Wales is with Caro. So I don't know what is going on here. Why EXO just wasn't brought into Rescue Wales. Caro's doing fine in that team as it is. Rescue Wales pretty good in their group stage, I would say, for the Renegade Cup. Let's not talk about that much. It's basically they've only a small amount of time to play with this lad, and you got to remember they were only just etched out by Epsilon in their group. Epsilon were 2 for 2, hashtag were 2 for 2, Nordavind were 2 for 2 as well. But the difference being Epsilon got 8 wins, 8 losses, hashtag got 7 wins, 7 losses. And of course, Epsilon beat hashtag in their game. So that's why Epsilon, because they beat their opponents, they draw win, Epsilon get that spot. So basically, hashtag were just etched out, and I feel sorry for them there, but that's just what tournaments are like, really. That's more of a problem that it's a single round robin instead of double, but it's a short period. Don't care about that. For me, hashtag are doing what they're doing, and they're doing fine. Remember, this is a bubble team going up against Epsilon, which are an RLRS contender. Nordavind, they're an RLRS contender. Fnatic, that are an RLRS contender. And can you guess what I'm going to say with ASUS being the Prosperous side? They're pretty much players that are closer to being RLRS contenders. They're still a little bit bubbly wobbly, but they're closer in that regard. So hashtag, if you were before the season to look at this, you'd thought they would have 0 for 4. Then getting 2 for 2, I think they did as expected or better. So hashtag, this is them building up to something greater. I just hope hashtag suddenly go to Rescue Wales. Right, you two lads, we want you for next season. Let's sign you up now for a longer term, but hashtag are only in it for Gfinity. They don't really care about Rocket League, which is a big shame.
It is a big shame because I could see a brand like hashtag be going down.
They're actually a
the
really
Rocket League
cool
space,
brand.
They are.
Massive respect for them.
It's not that they don't care in the sense that Unilad don't care. It's not like that. They certainly have a thing. They are having an investment in esports, even if it is just in FIFA and shit like that.
Well, it's FIFA and Street Fighter because hashtag are a little bit like Unilad in the sense of their main audience is in those games, so that's why they're in Gfinity. Rocket League is a new audience that they're just sort of trickling in, hoping they're going, oh, if we pick them up from Rocket League, that's cool, but they're not focusing their resources into it, which is understandable,
Yeah, and that's why I would have loved to see this team do so well. Because if they did make the playoffs, if they did make first place in their group, if they did smash everybody out the water and then do really good things in the playoffs, these are the players that do have the potential to do that. If they were able to win the championship for hashtags, and I think that maybe would have made them pay more attention to Rocket League, which is what kind of excites me about this roster initially. But in the end, it's not to be. I mean, again, as you say, you can't take it too hard on them because it was a bit of a weird project at the time. It was a bit like, okay, what can this team actually do? And then that unexpected factor came out and slammed everybody in the face. But again, if you were looking at the broadcast on Gfinity that day, you will see the team that was watching the match between who was it? Nordvin versus Asus, and they were looking, and they were back in the crowds, and there were camera shots of them constantly just like applauding, looking. You could see Ryan Doomsy had his hand, like a face in his hands, just like, oh no, it's actually happening, isn't it? Like we're going to be out again in group stage, and again, it's heartbreaking for them because it's just like,
well, because on that note, in that last game, they needed Asus to win because hashtag beat Asus so that they would be the promoted team, but no, that didn't quite work out there. And I mean, they lost their games to like hashtag lost to Fnatic and to Epsilon. Fnatic coming out on top, they were the best team there, and now RLRS team, but Gfinity is their sort of stomping ground in a lot of sense because they're all Gfinity players, but they're right. They put in a sub that their new man on the team to replace Siki was a Gfinity veteran, you know, in Mummy Snot. Fnatic did as I would expect them to come out on top. You know, these two groups are sort of seeded quite well in that regard. Nordvin, in the same sense, have been an RLRS team. Epsilon not making it into RLRS was an upset last season, but this new roster that they brought through is looking very good. I mean, you've got your doubts about them, but I say it's just a long-term thing they've got to deal with and just find that experience. It's more, like I said, hinging on Bilbo to come through, and they've got until next RLRS to do that, and this is more experience for them to improve, so I'm excited there. I actually think in the playoffs, do we have a little image for...
I didn't prepare that image, actually, no. We just got the...
You're a poo-poo head.
Yeah, I am a poo-poo head, and what?
But yeah, I think basically if it's not Fnatic to make it through to the finals of Gfinity, it's going to be Epsilon, because Epsilon are either very, very good, because remember, it's all on a single day. The last one, there's going to be 5 matches. If any team is going to beat Fnatic to that final, it's going to be Epsilon on an absolute rager of a day, and then they'll just take it all. You know, that's what we've seen from Epsilon.
That's my thing, though. That's my thing, and I have my doubts with Epsilon, is the fact that it's just like, it's all down to the day. If they're not performing on the day, then they're not performing at all, in short. And that's my thing with Epsilon, you know, like this is a team that should be able to do good things and should be able to do great things, but they just can't find that consistency to be like, right, we're going to smash these results out of the water, you know, like, and it does kind of suck because, again, I do see the potential. I do see what Bilbo can do. And obviously, you know, we talk about the players on this roster, you know, Sebadam and Cheerio, for fuck's sake. You know,
we have two very different mindsets about this, which I love, because you're there like, oh, I worry about that. I'm there going, nah, consistency can be learned, and that is what excites me about them, is that potential is there.
Well, yeah, but the thing is that they've got to learn the consistency first.
In Gfinity, they've got the allowance for it because nothing's sort of like at risk, if you know what I mean. The players that are on that, they're not being demoted to anything else. Don't get me wrong, Epsilon have been an org which is very flip-flop throughout the whole of it, but they've got a team here which I think they could stick to. Sebadam and Cheerio being, you know, Gfinity teams. Bilbo was a draftee last season, but these are now Gfinity lads which I think could stick with Epsilon for the long haul, and that is what they need, you know?
We'll see how that whole thing works out with Epsilon. But another team I want to focus on as well is Method, because this is kind of a team that didn't quite we didn't quite pay much attention to them because we wasn't really sure what they were going to be able to do. They came off of being on Reason Gaming in the season 2 and they won bad. They had a disappointing season 3, but here in season 4, they have actually roared, well, not quite roared ahead, but they have managed to just about cinch out the top placing in that group with 1 point. And when we saw Cassio move to the Method squad, obviously we were pretty excited about what he could have done. And when we were pretty excited about what Method could do. And certainly throughout the course of this season, they have looked like a team that have fulfilled their potential to a certain extent. I certainly feel that this team looks much better than the Reason roster that we saw way back in the day, and certainly a much more rounded team compared to that Reason roster. And you know what? I really think that they could have a really good shot at potentially moving to the RLRS in the next season. But I want to get your thoughts on this one, because this is, again, we've avoided this team as much as possible. Now it's almost impossible not to start talking about.
So I think actually the biggest reason why we avoided Method this season of Gfinity is purely because we expect them to do well. Like we were like, oh, they're just top 2 there. You know, Vitality was expected to come out on top of that group or like fight with Method. We weren't too fussed about it. It's like, if you've got a team that's expected to make it through and they make it through, you don't give a damn. That's just what it is like. It's the reason why we talked about Vitality so much, is because they did trash. So we're going to talk about that trash. It's just how it is. Like the reason why we like
we talk about trash because we are trash. Is what you're saying. Oh
well,
dear. Method's too good for us, boys.
Yeah,
but
the lads are actually brilliant. I do love the Method lads.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always
part.
backed the Rix Rondo and Burrito B duo. It just needed that solid third striker to really get the job done, and I think that they found that in the form of Casio. I think this could be a very long time home for these guys. Again, I'm quite excited to see what they'll be able to do. Obviously, they're coming in from the other half of the bracket. They've got either Nordavind or Reason Gaming to face up against.
Nah, they've got
and I think
half.
that match. Yeah, I mean, they probably should have that half. There probably should be another grand final performance, another grand final opportunity for Method. I think actually their first grand final opportunity in the Gfinity Elite Series, if I recall correctly. I'm gonna verify this.
Well, for Method, yes, but not for those lads technically, as they were on the Reason. Then they weren't there in season 3. They come back for season 4. It's just a little bit like, I find it quite funny in that they're not there season 1. They win season 2. Not there season 3. They win season 4 when they're there. It's just like boys, like literally turning up and running the joint. That's the sort of story which you love in Rocket League or in any esports, but it's not one that you like exactly pay close attention to or you don't mention because it's awesome. But you look at this side and they're a strong force. Method, like I said earlier, are on the level of the bottom half of RLCS. RLCS at the moment, and the reason why we always talk about that format change that's needed to hopefully make RLCS bigger is purely because the borderline between the two stages is almost unfair, because you could have, well, you wouldn't have it, but you've got the top 4 from RLCS, and then you've got the top 4 from the bottom 4 from RLCS, and the top 4 from RLRS on that same level, and it's like you've got a divide in between them, which it's awkward. That's why it is. So Method are, to me, on the same level as Fnatic, same level as Vitality, even though here they're well above. But it's just Method, keep doing what you're doing and you'll be in RLCS one day or whatever. Just we don't pay attention to them because they're just leagues above the competition here, especially when you've got Reason that are a pickup team. You've got XL making the changes, you've got Vitality just being trash, and even then you've got Envy, which are technically a pickup team as well. So Method, if they didn't make it through here, we'd be talking about them as harshly as Vitality. Just we didn't talk about them because they did what was expected of them and they were expected to win. If anything, I'm surprised they lost to Envy back in week 2, And I think we did talk about that.
we did bring that to mention. We were like, holy shit, what the fuck's going on with Method? But
that was just a good day for Envy and a bad day for Method.
It was quite a good day for Envy, and obviously Envy are going to take that second spot. But the team taking the third spot, and you mentioned just a moment ago, is Reason Gaming. I think this is, again, another roster that sort of surpassed people's expectations by quite the amount. Again, we were talking about it when Reason came into the fold. We were talking about the context around this team and what they'd be able to do within the Elite Series. And it looked like after week 4 that they were going to be eliminated. They were going to be out of the safety zone. They were barely holding on to that top 3 spot over the course of just an upset victories. And then they eventually got knocked down by the Method loss. But then they ended up winning against XL in the next week after that. It was a 3-1 victory. So XL basically lost out on their chance to move forward. It all came down to the Vitality versus Envy result, whether they'd be able to tie it up against Reason, and then they'd be able to win out on the basis of, I think, is it round loss? Is it match loss, game loss first, or?
So it was because Vitality beat Reason back in week 2. So yeah. Reason got the second win, and we're like, okay, if Vitality beat Envy, then Vitality take our spot. That is essentially it, because Envy was secured there as a top 3 team after week 2.
Yeah, but with a little bit of luck, and of course, so that little bit of skill against XL beating them out 3-1 overall, Reason managed to cinch a top 3 spot. They're going to be up against Nordavind in the playoffs. So let's gauge some thoughts really quickly on this roster. Like I'm pretty sure we both believe that it's probably going to be around a 6 run for them. I don't think that they can go very far in this playoff series. I have kind of put them down by quite the amount. Again, I'm still quite skeptical about what they can do. But again, for the likes of Shakaron, for what his project has kind of worked up towards, for the likes of, again, for Pugze and Calix, who have thrown, all 3 players have thrown together super last second for Reason Gaming, it is a pretty significant result for them.
So this is a weird one. I'm just literally going to my where on Wikipedia is it? I'm trying to just figure out. There's Neon Dream, because Nordavind, if I remember right, are looking to replace Data. I'm currently bringing up the Corporation Clash and just trying to find Nordavind on there, because they did with no, they've got Data on there, but for me it looks as if Nordavind are on the bench about Data's future. They've got Crow, who's the solid sub, but it looks as if they might be replacing him with Didrik. For me, if I'm looking at this match coming up, Jay, I'm there going, Data, buddy, you've got to make sure that Nordavind beat Reason here, because this is the big sort of proof for you. That's how it looks as a spectator into it, and that's how you read into this situation. Didris out of nowhere signs on to Nordavind roster for the Renegade Cup, which you know is important for Nordavind, because this is one which they should be making it through as an RLRS team. And if they're going up against a sort of RLRS borderline team Reason, who are in, I would say, an easier time. You know, they're in an easier position, but they're still a force to be reckoned with. Chakaron, Pugsley, and Calix. You lose here, and Data is going to be a bit worried, because the other two are the core staple of the team. You know, you're looking at Al Dente and Godsmiller. I don't think either of those need to change exactly. Data, I said, was the a solid player and could be a good force for this team. But I'm looking at him going, he's not bringing anything goal scoring wise to the squad, which is what they got from McLovin, you know, back in the day.
Yeah.
They need that factor
and that's,
they don't have that at the moment.
And that's the thing that I brought up when I was on Elite Series about how much I doubt Data. I think he's a great guy, obviously. You know, like we had a chat after the broadcast itself. But, you know, that is still lacking from the Nordavind side. So I still think they should be able to beat Reason Gaming. But if Reason Gaming come prepared into this final, into this semi-final, this quarterfinal, I think that there might be the chance for an upset. I'm not going to hedge my bets on it. I'm not going to say, right, that's definitely going to happen. But I certainly think that there's a little bit of room to breathe in terms of that particular result.
Yeah.
And if Reason Gaming can go to the semi-finals, that's going to do great things for the team and possibly the brand, depending on how Gfinity want to play things out in the next season.
Oh, yeah.
But finding that out as we go, we are still running very, very short on time.
Just
so
to quickly,
we are running overtime.
Just quickly to follow on to that, we're not banking on Data at all. We just personally don't think Data's a good fit for this team as sort of proof. That's just it. I think he'd be much better on another team, but just not this one. It's unfortunate he got into that. And yeah, with Reason, we just hope they do well, because we want to see Reason stick around even more. We want them in more than just Gfinity.
If Gfinity will let them, of course. But I digress. Right. Let's move on from the Gfinity Elite Series. Obviously, we'll just mention that right now, of course. That's going to be 11 o'clock GMT is the start of the Elite Series on Saturday, the final day, the final week, the final broadcast of the playoffs will be, of course, taking place on Saturday on Facebook for the Gfinity Elite Series. Obviously, you can tune into that if you're so interested. And of course, we'll be covering that on the AfterShock podcast, so make sure you follow us on all the regular channels. So let's talk about the big tournament that happened this weekend. In Atlanta, in a little studio owned by the Turner Network, ELEAGUE decided to kick back up again and put on its second Rocket League Cup. The ELEAGUE Cup 2018 has finished, and it was a very, very fun weekend. I only got to see so much because I was also in a studio doing a job of my own. But I did get to catch. I did get to catch a little bit of the matches right here, and of course, I did manage to catch most of the group stage as well. So let's talk about the groups. Let's talk about the games. Let's talk about how things played out. In Group A, NRG and Cloud9 managed to trump PSG and the Chiefs in the first group. In Group B, Dignitas and We Dem Girls managed to edge out the likes of Evil Geniuses and Flipside Tactics. Flipside Tactics just falling to We Dem Girls by a single game. Well, I say that, but truthfully, it was actually a choke of 3 games, as Nose Dude will be happy to point out to me. On Twitter, of course, it's all there. It's still public. Of course, those 4 teams went into the playoffs where NRG lost out to We Dem Girls in the semi-final for them to take a grand final spot against Cloud9, who beat Dignitas 4-1 again. And of course, We Dem Girls being the overall victors by beating out Cloud9 on a 4-1 scoreline. So, again, I kind of think most of the group stage was pretty standard. Most of the squads, most of the squads that was supposed to go through didn't end up going through. The only real result that I think that probably could have swung the other way was the Weedem Girls versus Flipside Tactics one. That match was extremely close. It was
for me,
very down to the wire.
For me, it was Cloud9 NRG in the winners finals of Group A. That could have gone either way. NRG just really showing up on day one, not showing up really on in the group stages. Didn't show up in the finally bit, the semi-finals in the playoffs. Because if NRG did another RLCS, we would have seen Chiefs go through in the lowers, Cloud9 go through in the uppers. That's just how it is. Dignitas had their solid form. No one can really beat Dignitas. Well, I'm
gonna debate that, to be honest.
In the group stages, in the finals, Dignitas, in the playoff finals is what I mean. So the semi-finals, they showed another upset, but they were just doing Dignitas things, which basically means they'll get the win with half-assed in it, if that makes any sense to you, Jay. Like, Dignitas are just, they're the bar, essentially, now. So we've seen teams beat them, but you're beating that solid bar of what top Rocket League is. So that's Weedem Girls and Cloud9, essentially, now, just being able to go above the bar. So they're excelling, but Dignitas are just doing normal, which is a weird sort, like, that's good for the state of Rocket League because we're starting to see teams really hit brand new heights. But Dignitas, they're just stagnant at the moment, which is the problem with Dignitas.
Yeah, they have certainly plateaued at the moment, which is a very, very worrying thing for a team that only a couple months ago we were calling as the best team in the whole world, one of the best teams to ever touch the fucking game of Rocket League. The Dynasty, yeah, it's truly dead now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, the best team in the world is heavily disputed. Obviously, we're talking about those Wikipedia ratings, and right now, Flipside don't even top those out. Yeah, like things are just not looking good for this squad. And even as we were talking about that, we sort of like see how it's transpired from Worlds to this. That Dignitas barely actually got through their group overall. 4-3 against the Evil Geniuses, a repeat 4-3 result in the semi-finals of the World. And then 4-3 against Flipside Tactics, a team Dignitas had fucking no troubles dealing with in league play. So, like, this team really has gone into a plateau, if not a slump. Like, these guys are not looking like the same Dignitas that I remember from so many months ago.
Yeah, both plateau and slump pretty much applicable here. I just prefer the term plateau over slump because to me it feels like Dignitas have stopped improving and they're just there. A slump to me would be like they've decreased in ability. For me, they've plateaued, but the other teams have improved.
You say that, but you also got to remember the fucking World's Grand Finals. Like they were pretty shit there. So
okay, yeah. Like, it's weird to say, again, you can't say anomalies in Rocket League when you have so few events, So that's the problem there. So maybe you're right. Like I said, you can't say it's a slump when you get so very events, and it's hard to judge between the two.
I think I would say it's a slump because obviously Cloud9 were able to repeat their results. That's 3-4-1 back-to-back victories for Cloud9 against Dignitas. Like, that's a level of consistency right there. Like, to me, that's a slump for Dignitas. Like, that's not. Yeah, again, a couple before Worlds, we couldn't even come up with the idea of the result being a Dignitas loss. It's completely like I'd argue it is a slump. That's where I'd go with plateau at the best case, slump at its worst. I certainly think it's leaning over to that slump side of things.
Yeah, I definitely get it, but like I said, you can't say it 100% purely because there's not enough events. But it is between those. Like you're not looking like you're looking at shades of grey essentially, with the slump being the black of it and the middle of the greys being a plateau. So it's all a hard sort of like judgment call. I hope, remember, we've got Leipzig, and I love to see that we've got Leipzig coming up because that basically means Dignitas, if you come back and win Leipzig, everyone's going to go, oh, it was just you being crap for a small period of time. Understandable. You're now being awesome again. But if they get worse than top 4 at Leipzig, which, that's a proper slumping off, then yeah, we've got the end of Dignitas and there's going to be a roster change, and that scares me.
Yeah, Leipzig, I think, is going to be a very important tournament for Dignitas. I do believe that's going to be
So
very,
many
very.
teams, because you got to think all these bubble teams coming through. Like I say, bubble teams, but the RLRS, like we're saying, we're expecting Savage and Red Reserve to be able to put on a real good performance because they will be there. You know, Bluey's there going, oh, I'm going to be the back-to-back DreamHack champion.
Leipzig champion, yeah.
Yeah, which would be, don't get me wrong, that'd be bloody cool to see, but I don't think it's going to happen because of the quality of other teams. And, you know, they've had a whole year now without LAN experience with all the others there. But for me, it's definitely Dignitas have the whole of winter essentially to grind away and come back for that completely anew. Maybe they've just had the brand change, you know, the brand change and all of that. Actually get a good result for that now. And I'm saying get a good result. They come fucking second and then coming out joint third, fourth. Like, that is not bad results at all, but it's just because we've been used to this groundbreaking, winning everything team that being silver and then bronze, you just say like, oh, Dignitas are trash. And it's just everyone overreacting because we've got lofty expectations because they've done so well there. And like,
yeah, but I think also, I think
change unless they drop before top 3 of Europe.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Though. You got to think about, you know, they also have the lofty expectations for their own right because they have been such a dominant force for so long. You know, like you think about a lot of dynasties in esports. You know, think about the Fnatic dynasty, for example, the NIP dynasty. I'm talking about just specifically for my own personal experience in the Counter-Strike world.
Basically, yeah.
The CS dynasties. You know, and all these rosters never ended up lasting well after their dynasties because they can never return to that level of form. And I am thinking, and you know, obviously there's also all other factors to consider. Like, and I know Dude was talking about complexity just a moment ago. You know, like I don't see it being able to recover from this situation if it sticks up. Again, if it's Leipzig and they turn up and win that tournament and dominate everybody, then fine, okay, it was a blip on the radar. It just happened to be the massive fucking blip that takes out both like 2 of the biggest and most important tournaments we have on the Rocket League calendar. But it's a blip nonetheless, and they can go back to being the best team in the world. But again, that's what leaves so much on the table for Leipzig. They've got to win that tournament.
It's a 50-50 and it's all speculation, so you don't really know. That's the problem.
Yeah, okay, well,
it can go both ways. Like, that's why I was like, you got to think if Dignitas do fall to slump, and like I said, they plateaued, they're not going to improve, whilst the other teams, then Red Reserve, I can quite comfortably say, will be at LAN next RLCS, you know, because they look to be the one that's growing towards that. Like I said, with Mouse, I'm not too worried about them. They could put up a good fight and maybe get a win there because they've already taken off the game. Don't get me wrong, it was from overconfidence from Dignitas coming in, losing that first one because they didn't think Mouse were going to be there. But it's Dignitas need to change that mindset and sort of regain a bit of fire in them, because at the moment they just seem to be drifting through tournaments just with their natural ability and not really much firepower spirit behind them, you know?
Yeah, there has to be a change. There's got to be a change. There's got to be a drive. There's got to be something new brought to the table, I think, for this roster. And again, I think it's all going to rest in Leipzig. That's what I have absolute confidence in, is the fact that everything is going to rest on Leipzig for this roster. But another team that would love to win at Leipzig and continue their little streak going is We Dem Girls. We talked about them a little bit earlier, having a bit of a mare over in the Rival Esports Autumn Open. But here at the ELEAGUE LAN, they looked really, really good. They looked fucking amazing, and I can say that it feels fucking amazing to see these guys do so well. Obviously, they've been dealt out the shit hand in Rocket League. Obviously, they've had their organization problems. We were talking about that a moment ago about how, you know, the potential that this roster has to do it on their own. Of course, they can't. But to see them come through as the only non-organization team in the ELEAGUE tournament and win, mate, fucking A, like super, like just supreme.
Like, actually, on that note, for me, one thing I was not expecting was the predictions. All of the casters and, of course, Machine host going in Cloud9's favor. I was just there like, don't get me wrong, you're all American, but Machine, go for your lads of EU, you know, with them girls. I was backing them for it. Like, you know, they this is one thing that needs to go onto the RLCS streams, is that like little prediction thing. That was just quite fun to do, seeing the two teams. I didn't even look at the leaderboards afterwards, but every single one I was there, and I picked Weedham Girls for that match because them taking down NRG, don't get me wrong, NRG were fluffing up and make mistakes, but Weedham throughout the entire tournament, barring that little blip with Flipside, to me, they looked good. Flipside looked bloody good. They just had Dignitas and Weedham Girls in their group. That, for me, like, because it was all off the back of RLCS seeding, you know, and just how it is. But me, Flipside could have been there as well, getting to the finals, I think, in this. They just unfortunately had a Weedham Girls that were building towards this phenomenal final at the end.
Yeah.
And Cloud9, I just don't know, like, they didn't drop off. Like, Cloud9 were doing great throughout the whole of it, of course. Don't get me wrong, they dropped off to NRG, who had a fantastic little game against them. But it was just that case of Cloud9 just could not resurge that awesomeness against Dignitas. Cloud9 now have a strategy against Dignitas, don't get me wrong, because they have figured them out. 2 4-1s now in a row. You know, Cloud9 they've done their research, and everyone else wants to copy their homework on how to beat Dignitas. That's what we're looking at here with Cloud9.
But of course, that does mean that there is the potential, of course, for another EU team to rise from the ashes, like Weedham Girls. And as well as that, with Flipside being able to do so well against Dignitas, with Weedham Girls placing higher than Dignitas so far in the group stage and in the tournament overall, it does throw Europe's #1 back into contention. You know, like, I think the next season is going to be very interesting to see whether Dignitas will hold on to that online mantle, whether they'll be able to hold on to that LAN mantle. You know, there's
the problem we've had
a lot of...
is that Dignitas did not face Weedham Girls throughout the whole of ELEAGUE. And if that happened and Weedham Girls beat Dignitas at ELEAGUE, we'd be there, and won ELEAGUE, of course. We'd be like, Weedham Girls, the new #1 team in Europe. Because they didn't face each other, I don't feel comfortable saying that Weedham Girls is #1 yet. I would still say Dignitas is there. If anything, they're tied for first. I think we need to just wait for Leipzig to be able to make that proper call, you know?
Yeah. I'm in the agreement for that one again. Leipzig is going to be a very, very important tournament. And again, if Weedham Girls win it, then suddenly the whole landscape looks entirely different for Rocket League. So let's look forward to that one in 2019. But other than that, I think we're pretty much done for Premier Tournaments in the year. We're done for this week at the very least on RL AfterShock. Still got a couple of smaller tournaments we need to focus on. Again, the Neon Dreams coming up, and obviously we've got the final week of Gfinity, so that's going to be very, very fun. That'll all be coming your way next week. But other than that, we're done this week. That's it. We've gone for 2 hours. We usually do an hour-and-a-half podcast, but these are progressively getting a little bit more longer and longer, Bacon. Like, I think we're gonna have to do something about that, I think.
You're too we were there before doing all of these podcasts going, oh, I don't know, because I was very much in the favor of, I'm one of those people that don't like 2-hour podcasts. Admittedly, for me, my sweet spot is an hour, but like frequently once a week, and I listen to a lot of podcasts. That's why, because I like loads of different podcasts. But here, if we're stretching for 2 hours, we're going to need a sponsor or something, Jace, to actually make it worth it, because that's generally what you see of podcasts, like an hour and a half, or if you've got a sponsor, or 2 hours if you've got 2 sponsors. So hit Jay up in those DMs.
I'm open to everything, boys. Right, but other than that, we'll talk about sponsors when we get to there. For now, though, let's end off the show because we are done for the day. Once again, thank you very much for watching. If you've been watching the live version of the show or the VOD version of the show, in that case. Again, if you're not familiar, if you don't know what's going on, you can follow us on Twitter at RLAfterShock. The podcast is also available on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and probably on your most preferred platforms. Make sure you go follow it on there, or through the RSS feed on anchor.fm/RLAfterShock. Now, next week, we may or may not be doing a podcast live. We may be doing it a day later in Bucharest doing Counter-Strike tournament. So we're going to try and see if we can figure things out. Make sure, again, if you do want to keep up with what's going on with that, then make sure you follow the Twitter again at RLAfterShock, and we'll keep you posted with all of the week's action. Again, we should be back.
Hard to do. I just thought, because I'm Friday night I'm traveling out for the NFC finals, which we might talk about a little bit next week, the UK university scene stuff. So we're not going to be free Friday night like we normally do as a fallback.
Oh, I'm going to be in Bucharest anyway on Friday night. So, it's going to be, things are going to get super awkward. So we might have to do one on live on Tuesday, but we'll figure that out. We'll get into the discussions, and again, we'll bring you all that news as it
Neon
comes
Dream
down.
no, it's not. It's Wednesday, Thursday. What I'm saying, Tuesday it is.
I'm on the ball. You're not. Right, okay, but let's get the fuck out of here. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you back here for next week with more from the AfterShock.